हम ऐसे अच्छे बच्चों की तरह बैठ जाते हैं पहले.
सही में.
Hey guys, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. A pleasure to have you guys on.
Thank you for having us on. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Finally, we are on. We were having quite a bit of technical difficulties, but finally,
Yeah.
we're on. I almost thought we'll have to cancel. Like, all right, Ishan, nice to meet you, but now we are fucking off.
बता दो नहीं दिया मैं टेक्निकल गए हूँ और
अरे
उसकी
नहीं
technical-
पागल है क्या? तो हाँ. Thanks for having us on, man.
Right. So, bro, we were having a fascinating conversation, as you just said, just before like we started off, and there's so many things we can probably just start off from there. Really, like possibly a good way to start off is like, what do you think? Like, maybe it's a very silly question in that sense, but several people ask me that, and I think maybe you guys could probably give your definitions to it. Like, what do you think a podcast is? Like, as simple as that. Yeah.
So, anyone want to take this?
Yeah, you go first.
We'll raise our hands.
I'll get the time to think.
I'm sorry not to directly answer your question because हम तीन लोग हैं and you know it's like I don't want to cut over my friends or you. So what do I think about podcast is? So basically I was reaching out to this guy, a friend I know, more of an acquaintance, and I was like, look, I'm doing this podcast and we would love to have you. And he was like, what would the podcast be about? And I sort of said, it's very free flowing conversation. And then I said, it's exactly opposite to an interview, because you know interviews mostly like question, you get the answer, the question, you get the answer, and that's at least how we look at the podcast, you know. So a good analogy is what I'm trying to think of, but I'm not smart enough to think of it right now. But yeah, it has to be free, that it can go anywhere. For me, it's a free flowing conversation. That's basically it.
I think it's mostly sharing of experiences over a large group of people. क्योंकि लाइक अगर फैक्ट्स वगैरह भी कोई बता रहा है तो यू कैन ऑलवेज सर्च इट ऑन गूगल और समथिंग, बट एक्सपीरियंसेस आर समथिंग जो बंदे के हम सबके अपने पर्सनल होते हैं. तो इट्स आई थिंक विद पॉडकास्ट इट्स लाइक शेयरिंग ऑफ दोज एक्सपीरियंसेस ओवर अ लार्ज ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल.
Yeah, so we have this in our Insta bio as well. Speaking facts, building opinions, and sharing experiences. So yeah, that's pretty much our take on the podcast thing. Yeah, so we just want to share knowledge, and the title is the Not Knowing Podcast. So we don't know anything, and we just talk about it. And yeah, so that's it.
It's the feeling of getting friends without having to take the responsibility of friends.
Yeah,
so it's good for the listeners.
So
I think that's that's what we're trying to do with the podcast. We're trying to pretend to be your friends.
See, but then you guys have touched upon a really good point there, because and I think you guys touch upon it when you get guests on or people on who you want to speak to in that sense, and I've faced this sort of, I don't know if I want to call it difficulty, but like this particular thing as well, where people be it guests, be it whoever, ask me, okay, so like what are the questions, like what are the topic areas. So the thing I do is that obviously I try to explain it's going to be unscripted, but then what I sort of do say is that there are these general topic areas or these general questions I would like to touch base on, because that's just an entry point for me. Otherwise, sometimes I don't even get the conversation. We're like, bro, this guy is just going to ask me whatever and put me on the spot. But like, what do you guys feel about that though? Because do you feel people are almost
we still fight about it.
People are almost engineered in this way to think that because what the traditional media feeds them, what everything feeds them, is to say that, okay, so you get these sets, you get these questions, or this is how a person asks you, so this is the way you have to reply almost.
I'm sorry, in my computer I think मेरे साथ थोड़ी सी दिक्कत हुई. I sort of couldn't hear the last thing you were saying, so apologies if I completely destroy your question with answering something else, but you were talking about, you know, having some points to fall back on in a sense in the podcast, right? We still have fights to this day. Like Siddhant and Nono are Deepanshu are always like, you know, कुछ चीजें होनी चाहिए. So like we'll talk about this, and I'm like, fuck it all. Let's just sit there. Let's just turn on the camera. Let's see what happens. That's not the best, obviously, approach to it. So I think I should start listening to Siddhant a bit more.
But it happens with the guests who are introverts. So
exactly.
in our experiences, what happens is when the guest is an introvert, you throw a question at him and he just replies with yes or no.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't really get the conversation flowing. So that's when we need the topics to fall back on.
And then there's this awkward silence
Yeah, then this
जो
is obvious.
दोनों
That
के
is
मन
where-
में चल रहा होता है कि भाई तू कुछ मेरे से पूछ, मैं तो पूछ नहीं पा रहा तू.
just address it though. You should always address that
Yeah.
awkwardness, I guess.
Hmm.
In a
एंड
nice
देन
way.
उसके बारे में भी टॉपिक खत्म हो जाए, एड्रेस कर दिया, उसके बाद फिर क्या बोले.
Well, then you're fucked. I'm sorry, yaar. Is it okay to curse on your podcast?
Yeah, man,
I
it's
didn't
calm.
ask.
It's the free media to
That's
some
rude
extent.
of me.
To some extent, I
Ah.
guess.
But
Everything's
like,
censored, to be
you
honest.
were,
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
very politely, you know, you just welcomed
Yeah.
us and I just came on and I'm like, fuck it all. So, sort of rude of me, but yeah.
No, it's all calm. It's all calm, man. So, I mean, just touching on that though, like, so when you, so the manner in which I go about conversations is that I research intensively, like I research extensively. I get like things down I want to ask the guest, because as Siddhant said, right, there's some guests who are just going to be like that. Like some of the conversations I've had. So what am I really going to say? Because I don't even know, because sometimes the guests are only willing to give me 45 minutes an hour. And the way I look
Yeah.
into conversations is that you don't really get a conversation going beyond. So a real conversation, in my opinion, where you actually sort of understand where the guest is coming from, is after 45 an hour or something like that. You sort of get the mind space where they're in. So the manner in which I go about is I have my questions down, I have my topic areas down, but I don't look at them. I just have the conversation. But if I feel that, acha, there's somewhere possibly I could intervene with a question or something, I do that. So yeah, that's just how I go about it, man.
Yeah, that's probably what we should start doing. And these two guys have been telling me to do this for a long time since we started the podcast.
Okay, I'm taking notes now.
We should have those.
So we have this process where I usually think by the post of the podcast. So Nilesh gets the conversation flowing. Nilesh is the initiator for the podcast, and then we barge in with the conversation. So Nilesh would probably be more good with the explanation of how he does the conversation flow. So I'll direct it to him.
No. No, it's just a sad thing to say for our podcast that I am the one who keeps the conversation going because I'm very bad at it.
No. I said that you are the initiator of the conversation. So the
No, I get your point.
welcoming of the guest and then getting him in the right space. So that's what I'm
I
saying.
completely agree with Ishan when he said it takes about 45 minutes to get really started. And we've been feeling that now because we just started to have guests. And yes, we are basically facing through that. And just think about it, you know, as we were talking about it, it's almost like having conversations with your friends. And me and Siddhant, we are not like the childhood friends. We became friends, I guess, 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And there was like months and months and months of just knowing each other. And then you can have a conversation. So you cannot even expect 45 minutes, maybe I'll have a great conversation with someone.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time to know someone, and it takes a long time to be comfortable in front of someone, you know, to reveal your insecurities, to be, you know, comfortable with them, basically. Yeah.
And Nilesh, just to add to that though, like, and so this is something, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast or before when we were talking, because I've forgotten now. But the thing is, so when people ask me, when guests ask me, when my family friends ask me, like, why do you have such long conversations with people? No one's going to be listening in, no one's going to be watching in. I'm like, I just like having those sorts of conversations. And I've seen examples in the West, and I've seen not only in the West, but in India as well, that if you can put it through, if your conversation is engaging, if there are people who are actually engaged in the conversation, there's a flow to it, you actually understand where it's going, I think people will be engaged. I just think there's just this bad notion, I don't even know how to term it in that sense, but that like content has to be in a certain way, and that's just the way it's going to be consumed, be it on any platform, really. Like, what do you guys have to speak to that, like, in that sense?
I think, well, since the last 2 decades, internet has been basically breaking those stereotypes at least. And I'm thankful for that. But, you know, basically, I think just doing this podcast, it's great for you. And by you, I mean everyone who's doing a podcast. Because, you know, as we were talking about Joe Rogan, if I'll go on YouTube and I can basically search anything and put Joe Rogan in front of that and find a podcast like about that. You know, and, it's good for you because that's really broadening up your mind. And we were also talking about, you know, where is this podcast thing going? You know, when we were talking about us, it doesn't even matter where it goes. There's like a lot of different places your mind will go. And I think it's worth it. So I think that is also true that the traditional media treat people like dumb. It's like we're just basically picking things off from that conversation we had before the podcast started. We literally had half a podcast before that. So I think it's almost like I'm just repeating
Thank you,
myself.
Deepanshu.
So yeah, I think the media guys or the big folks who are in control, sort of, so to
Mhm.
speak, they've been treating audience very badly. Like they're dumb people. Let's just give them an ABCD of this, or just spoon feed them the knowledge we think they should have.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's what internet, I guess, really broke through. So yeah, again, I don't remember your question, buddy.
Yeah. So I mean, just do that, man. Like in the sense that, do you think they're entirely at fault though? Like with the TV media companies, or even I'm not only going to pick on, let's say, the TV channel people, but even people who are big on YouTube and other OTT platforms as well. Because I've seen several people take the same approach on these digital platforms, which people were doing on the traditional media. But do you think it's entirely for them to be like put to fault because because they have so many people working for them, right? They've seen like this profit model work for so many years. Like why would they want to even change it? We as individuals who may like a different kind of content may understand why, let's say, there should be different kinds of content out there. But like, for them, do you think that they would even consider, like, this 18-year-old thinks about content a certain way, but how do we care? Like, we're engaging to a much larger audience.
That's totally true. And again, I just
Hmm.
I'm really sorry I keep going off the track, but I was just saying, I just start answering the question without considering the two of my friends. So sorry for cutting you off, guys. I'm very much of attention whore right
No,
here.
take your time. Take your time.
No, I completely agree with you that it is a tried and tested business model. And those industries, well, they're basically doing business. But for me, and I'm not really necessarily trying to go deep here, but for me, it's a bigger problem than that. And we have talked about this in our podcast. And when we're talking about media, it's basically art. What we're doing, at least when we're talking about fictional things, right? And even reality shows, that's a different form of art, but it is art nonetheless. And art is basically something that has been driving the, I would say, human intellect for thousands of years. Without art, there is no intellectual advancements, we can almost say. So when you stop that for money, I don't think it's a good deal.
Yeah.
So I totally get their business model. They are there to do business, but if art is not creative, that is, you're basically stopping the intellect of a entire generation, I think. So,
And like
or multiple generations.
I was about to quote you from our recent podcast, like bad content makes the generation dumber and the next generation dumber. Which is like कि जो बंदे हैं ना उनका potential waste हो रहा है. To which they can think, समझ रहे हो, वो bad content दिखा के.
And then it's an exponential decline.
Yep. Yeah.
So
And
I don't think it's worth the trade.
Yeah.
I need to add it to, like, when you're wired in such a way that you only think about the monetary benefit of it. So the brands are really making their ends meet. They are working to earn the money from the guest only. So they are putting their face and then earning money. So I don't think they really care about the content that they are putting out. They're just providing them a script, and that's like I told you before the podcast as well. Like I shared you an example.
So, go on to that example, because that was fascinating. Because, and I see this happen so often.
Yeah. So Nilesh, I was telling him about the UV show that we shot, and so she was interviewing a minister, and then she handed him a question, a series of questions, and then she's like, hey, "You need to answer this." And the most stupid thing, or the most putting off thing, I'd say, was when she was doing the game thing. And then she's like, मैं आपको ये word बता दूंगी, आप ये answer दे देना. So that's how it's being put out there.
Look, I would say it's worse than that, and I don't want to throw shade at that show. I mean, like,
yeah, exactly.
We worked for that show, so basically, we all work in video industry, I guess is a word. But so I edited a lot of those shows, and again, not throwing shade at that particular show, because every show basically does that. And there were great people in that show, who were being interviewed, and it was like a hour and a half of the interviews. As an editor, I had to cut them down to 20 minutes. Wow. And I know, the Pareto's distribution, that the 80-20 rule, the 80% of value lies in the 20% of the content. But There's a reason you need to read the entire book and not the summary.
Yeah.
And I came to them, to Siddhant and the other friend we have, Pulkit, who basically runs the production company. And I came to them and I was genuinely feeling bad about cutting out the real uh, content which would really profit the viewer. And again, you can only put that shit out on the internet, not on the TV. It's just not going to work like that. So yeah, I feel bad about that.
So it was the whole process of making 4 minutes का वीडियो कि यही लोगों को समझ में आएगा, and then the ad का 30 seconds यहीं पे होना चाहिए, and then वहाँ से फिर conversation फिर flow होना चाहिए. So it was the whole mainstream interview kind of thing that we were talking about.
So I felt bad being a part of it, but yeah, it paid me. So again, it's kind of hypocritical of me, but
no, but you guys are speaking so much truth to it though, because the thing is, I've had so many conversations with digital creators, but across the board actually, not just in the digital space, but also in radio and all these other platforms. So I had this radio jockey on, and she said that whenever she goes into an interview, or like she has someone on like her show on radio or whatever, if she's working on a digital platform as well, because she does so, she says that the producers already told her that from this particular interview clip, even if it's 5 minutes, we need like 2 bytes, which means that we can share it on social media or something. So like she's not even thinking about, like she's not even having the conversation, if that makes sense, with the person, because she's only thinking about, acha, so how can I possibly frame it in this way, or what words can I use that would be catchy or that would work on Instagram or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're basically using the trigger points.
Yeah,
like I don't care who I'm interviewing, like, oh, there is your controversy, the biggest controversy which is out in the media right now, so give me something on that. Again, just like you said, we just need 2 bytes. And it's just and I would say, like, hold on, I'm not a huge business tycoon, right? But if you call me for an hour and you take 2 bits out of it, that's kind of wasted my time. And yours too, by the way. But again, the problem is you're basically comparing the time taken to the views you got or the money you earned. So you think it's a good deal, but maybe there are things more important than that.
Yeah.
But I think it's also depends on the audience as well. For example, like there are content creators or value providers like Jordan Peterson, you all must know him.
So like, he's also a big fan. Ishan is also a big fan.
Dude, we if you want, we could just speak on the whole podcast.
यार, तो for example, जैसे मैं कह रहा हूँ ना कि it also depends on audience. So it's very hard to follow what he says or listen to what he says. Like he says, clean your room, या take responsibility. तो बंदा अपने आप ही कहेगा अरे यार ये तो बहुत इजी है, हो जाएगा. बट व्हेन यू एक्चुअली फॉलो ना, मतलब मैं अपने पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से बताऊं, लाइक आई यूज्ड टू थ्रो माय क्लोथ्स ऑफ और टॉवल ऑफ व्हेन आई मतलब केम फ्रॉम अ शावर, एंड लाइक जब मैंने वो ट्राई करा ना, इट वाज सो फकिंग हार्ड टू डू इट फॉर लाइक 7-8 days consistently. तो आई नो कि मतलब इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट, पर लोगों को लगता है कि नहीं, कहते हैं बहुत.
That is what I find the best thing about Jordan Peterson is he would take something so simple that we have been saying for years without even thinking about them, and he's like, but hold on, think about it. Why is that being said? Why are your parents saying that? Why are their parents saying that? I know they don't know, but think about it and see what's going on in their, like, even in his new book, and where he explained in the first chapter about it's not about if you win, it's about how you play.
Yes.
And he's like, think about it. Why do you say that? And there are reasons for that. Like, we take so many things for granted, and I was talking basically the same thing. I think we already have had this conversation on the podcast. It's like, so I was basically listening to a musician, right? And my mother in fact said, music connects you to God, and that's a really strong statement. And if I say it to anyone, they're like, sahi baat kahi hai, kuch tagda hai. But and I'm like, think about that. Okay, here are the words. Music connects you to God. If you think about music, we don't know what it is exactly.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We don't know what music is. If Dhinchak Puja and if Eminem, they both cannot be the same thing.
Right.
Music, they're very different, right? The definition of difference. Anyways, so we don't know what music means. We don't know what connect means. We don't exactly know. We know what it represents. We don't know what it means. There's also a difference there. Then you. Since the beginning of philosophy, we've been talking about what you means.
Yeah.
And another question, God.
Don't even get me started.
We don't know the meaning of one word in the sentence, but we all think we get the sentence.
Yeah.
and we're just going through like that. And again, I don't want to keep beating on the same thing over here, but I think a part of the reason is also, the lack of art in our cultures. And there was a time there would be one big painting, we'll be thinking about what it means. Now that's a cool fucking painting.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of because of that, but might be the reasons too.
Now the NFT space has ruined it. Yeah, like you cannot go and watch out a
I won't
painting
say
in
that.
a museum and everything. Like NFT
नहीं
space
but
is
we
killing
like
it.
जब हम देख रहे थे NFT site पे, तो like we were also analyzing what it could mean, right?
Yeah.
So there must be
So-
people like us.
Yeah, so I think like this is very off top, but in museums you have to check the credibility of the artist to put up a painting there.
Exactly.
Oh,
But in the NFT space, you are not really checking the credibility. You are on an invite basis. So if I get it through some shady thing, like if I get an invite on the NFT space through a shady thing, and I pass it on to Nono or Nilesh, so then I didn't really check their credibility. I just know that they are my friends. They need to run through this
And-
thing, and I get them on the NFT space.
Here's what will happen. Okay, let's say जो NFT में जो भी start हुआ, you gave the credibility to the top dog, like to the
Yeah.
best there is, right? वो बंदा किसको दे सकता है? People who are worse
To
than him.
his friends, yeah.
He is the top dog. So he can only give it to people who are worse than them. Then who'll they give it to? Again, slow decline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this is all very presumptuous of me. I haven't really gotten into NFTs a lot. But I do find that, and there are YouTube tutorials of that, how to make NFT arts, and they're teaching you how to make abstract arts.
Yeah.
That's not what abstract art is.
Yeah, so what they do is there's this software called Cinema 4D. They just go in, they just put in random 3D objects, and they just turn the sliders, and then they say this is the abstract art. You can put it up on the NFT sites, and it'll sell. So
Again.
people in the horde of earning money are doing that thing, and from watching the 2-minute, 3-minute tutorial, and then probably
Again, using the two
destroying
words
the NFT
abstract and art without
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
well, like I
See,
don't mean
that's
to
how-
blame them. मतलब schools में art and craft subject होता है, and what they fucking teach, making a house,
उसके बारे में तो we cannot even talk. उसके बारे में
making
we
a
cannot
making
even
a bird like this V and person and
Yeah.
house. Art and craft
Ah.
is the
But
subject.
I think if you pursue arts, like in your 12th and in college, if you pursue arts, they teach you really the history and the everything. They don't really teach you making houses and everything. जो school में होता है कि scenery बना लो, ये बना लो, वो बना लो. But हाँ, if you go really deep into art, so I think they'll probably teach you the history of thing. That's where you get started with it.
But just if I just have to touch upon something like what Deepanshu just mentioned, like what's the general picture that comes into our mind when we conceptualize art because of how we're taught in school. So I think there have been several
Yeah.
studies done by art schools and even psychology labs where they've almost given, so they've had a group of students who have come in, given them a blank sheet of paper and asked them to draw anything. And I'm forgetting the figures here, but like I think 60% or 70% of the people, what they draw is an identical picture almost. So they draw a valley with a sun coming on from behind, a bunch of
Yeah.
clouds, a river flowing, and a couple of villages, a few trees. That's like almost an archetypical picture, which is almost
Exactly.
given to us
Hmm.
through school.
Yeah.
So
It's
In
been
fact-
wired so closely to us.
it's the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing that Jordan Peterson talks about. Like we think we have ideas, but it's more that ideas have us.
Mhm.
And that's such a deep thing to actually think about. Because as Nilesh has been pointing out as well, that we think we can construct sentences for ourselves and we understand where we're actually headed, but that's not actually the case. It's like it's all such a deep, it's all so deep that you can just get lost in it.
I was actually thinking about the same thing when no one was mentioning about the whole birds and everything. Again, मेरा mind फिर से वहाँ गया about the Jordan Peterson idea of like how do you know that plane is a plane? That's nothing like a plane, but you connect it to it, and that's kind of an archetype. True. And I also had another idea in my mind which I completely forgot. So let's move on.
As I said, ideas have you. You don't have ideas.
Exactly. Ishan, you were talking so nice, like completely was lost in your words. So I lost the track of my.
Just to that, like you were talking about now, why do you think that Jordan Peterson is talking about some of the most basic things out there, right? Like get your life in order, work on your relationships, get your room in order, this, that, whatever. We've known that for so many years, but we've never almost conceptualized it. And that's what he says, right? That's what he says, that's what great thinkers or great people do. it's because knowledge is already there. They just sort of channelize it in a manner that you're able to then work towards it in your life and able to apply it. That's what the greatest of philosophers have ever done, right?
Nowadays, you could just call them overthinkers. Overthink क्यों कर रहे हैं? ना छोड़ ना chill मार.
हाँ
Get a fucking joint.
ज्यादा सोच रहा है यार तू.
भाई तेरे को कुछ हो रहा है.
Overthinking is looked at as a problem.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. अरे इसके बारे में क्यों सोच रहे? Depressed हो रहा है, पागल है क्या? चल पार्टी करें. Again, obviously I'm exaggerating, but हाँ.
But
Looked
like
upon
most
as a
of the
problem.
people are like that. Have you watched that? मतलब एक speech थी जो तो military man है एक वो speech दे रहा था and he said
Jocko Willink.
नहीं I don't remember कौन था.
He's also another intellectual.
हाँ.
That's way.
तो मतलब वो उसने बोला कि the first step you could take to make your life better is clean your room, and everybody in the room started laughing.
Dude, that is.
And
that
like
is so
उस
good
वक्त
because-
भी उस let me
हाँ,
complete.
sorry.
और उस वक्त like मुझे भी इतना नहीं पता था तो मैं भी हंस रहा था. मैं क्या बोल रहा है बंदा.
And it is so good because it is true philosophically and literally and practically. And yes, the last two basically mean the same thing. But there are very few things like that, you know, where you can be. So I am interested in philosophy, and if any of my friend is going through any of the problem, I obviously always start with, look, don't take my word for it. I don't know. But it is very hard to give a philosophically accurate answer to someone with the practical advice they can do.
Yeah.
It is very hard, and that's why there are few things like clean your room and tell the truth or at least don't lie.
Yeah.
There are a few things like that.
Dude, but then you might, as you're saying, you may think that these are simple from the onset, but when you
Mhm.
start actually applying it in the world, like think about the times where so Jordan Peterson, and I think other people also, Eric Weinstein, who's another intellectual in this space
Mhm.
on YouTube, he talks about this, that there are white lies and things like that. So imagine how many times you actually say white lies just to get out of the situation. And
that is a big difference that came into my life, is because, you know, I would go for shoots, like shoot for people and everything. One thing I stopped saying, sorry I'm late because the traffic was too much. I stopped saying I overslept, I'm sorry. I took responsibilities for those little things, and because I was having to take those responsibility, I was doing that wrong shit less and less. So it is gonna make you a better person. Not only you're an honest person, which is I would say good moral thing to do, but also you're being better at your job because because you're not making excuses anymore, and because you have to take responsibilities for those actions, then you know take good actions. So you become a better human being, become a better at your job.
I remember Jordan Peterson saying, like, if you tell the truth, oh boy, that's an adventure.
No man, that's so
And
true.
the best fucking thing is कि जब कोई उसे बोलता है ना कि you have made my life better and he cries. Fucking.
Dude,
Like,
yes, I've seen those clips. Like अगर मेरे YouTube पे तुम जाके सर्च करोगे जॉर्डन पीटरसन, तो उस पे वो ब्लू कलर में लिखा है crying, because I've already searched that. And, like, here's my thing. The first clip I saw of him crying was like, you know, when people come to me, I think exactly what Nolan is talking about is like, I've watched your lectures. I have a good relationship with my father now, and he's like, you know, good on you, man, because people don't get appreciated enough. And he's crying like that, and you can see the compassion he has for the people. And you know, he does say himself he's a pretty agreeable person, that's why he went into philosophy. But you can see that compassion. And to me, what I'm thinking is like, how is traditional media so much against this guy?
Exactly.
And it's really hard not to think of them as evil people, you know, because if someone is saying clean your room, speak the truth, and you're like, oh, this tyrannical right,
patriarchal, right wing,
so
whatever
it's
adjectives you want to use.
hard to look at them without, you know, thinking like, these guys are just evil, man, come on. But yeah, they're also
maybe he's just throwing away all the interview scripts that he gets. So he just goes to the internet and says, fuck it. Like, I'll get the conversation flowing.
But you know what he said to that though, right? Like he said, I think in one of the interviews that he'd gone, I'm forgetting which channel he put it he went on the interview for. I think it was Vox or something. This was
Chris Williamson's podcast.
Reporter.
I didn't watch that particular interview, but this was something he said a while back as well, that he'd given like a 2-hour interview or something, and then that media channel just cut like 15 minutes and threw away the rest.
I think it was his interview with Jim Jeffries.
Possibly.
where he was talking about I'm not sure, again correct me if I'm wrong, he was talking about should the bakers be forced to bake cakes for homosexual weddings,
Oh, right.
right? So that guy Jim Jeffries, he's a comedian, so I think it's almost like expected. Still not right ethically,
Yeah.
but he's a fucking comedian, he's not a journalist. So
But even journalists for that matter, man, like even journalists have like, I don't even know what
journalism
they're
isn't
doing.
true.
Yeah.
Journalism sorry
Exactly.
isn't true.
What is journalism
That
now,
even
bro?
mean?
What is journalism now, man? Like
we recently had on our podcast Neon Man. He's doing great on his YouTube channel, and he's a news YouTuber. I don't know how to say that.
Biggest news YouTuber, ऐसे कुछ.
Yeah, great guy. No shit on
Great
him.
guy.
But and that's what he said. Here's what I'm trying to do with my channel. I put out every fact that I have, be it from this side, be it from that side, and I'm like, that's what journalism is, and that's not what journalists are doing. So they might want to learn something from this 19-year-old kid.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
and he really does this. He's just like, I have this opinion that this guy told me this guy clarified this on his Instagram, and now these two opinions are out there. Now it's for you to decide what's good and what's bad.
And it's not like कि उसकी बहुत कम reach है कि फर्क नहीं पड़ता यार, कुछ भी बोलेगा तो, like, है ना?
He's one of the biggest news channels in India.
Yeah.
And
He's doing
that's
a
the thing.
pretty
That's
great
also
job
part of the
on-
reason. I'm sorry, Siddhant.
No. I was
Yes.
just saying that he's doing a great job on the
Yeah.
journalism thing. Like
Okay.
he's actually pursuing journalism.
Exactly. And I think partly that's also the reason why podcasts are doing so well now, because people are craving something which is not as one-sided.
Yeah.
See, that's how good of a conversationalist I am. I bring it back. Okay, ज़्यादा तारीफ कर ली अपनी,
You'll have to
allowance.
see it. Yeah. No, but yeah, there's so much truth to that. Like I was reading, so Rajdeep Sardesai is probably one of the biggest journalists in the country. Like I don't know how much of a journalist. I guess you can call him a journalist, but he's more TV presenter, TV presenter / journalist. So, so what he mentioned in his book, How Modi Won India, 2019, How Modi Won India, was that there are so many of these, let's say, young journalists who are working for these media companies. And the media and the producers and these managers at these media companies were coming in to say that, "Acha, what आज opposition के against क्या हम लोग लिख सकते हैं?" So not even thinking about what the actual news is, like what the actual stories are on the ground, but because let's say this anti-BJP this anti-BJP thing is getting clicks or something, which is going to be propagating that, and like that's what he said that. And I mean, I don't even know at this point, like how you can go about it, because this is not only, we were talking about it a little bit before we started a conversation. This is not only in India. Like it's not only like we see NDTV or the Republic TV in India, but it's the same thing with the US, man. Like they have CNN, MSNBC. No, but the same thing, right? Like
including himself.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
But I think that's the same thing, like providing content on profit models, like. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, I also had something better to say instead of that stupid joke. So something that is exactly what writers do. So okay, I like writing. Okay, and I'm basically aspiring writer as well. I'm aspiring storyteller, not only a filmmaker, I would like to say. So everyone should know that. But yeah. And that's what writers do when they're working on a web series. They would sit in a room for 9 hours and just be like, okay, what we can put out, which will be funny. And, the conversation gets stupid. And this is basically, I'm quoting Bill Burr from an interview. And just like, they go like, oh, midget is a nice word. But in this context, I think monkey would be funnier than a midget when you're calling someone that. It gets that bad for the writers. But that's basically what news writers are doing now. So, yeah. And the whole thing is, I do not watch any news. So
same.
So हम ये भी बात कर रहे थे ना कि like we should have topics and everything, and I'm so much against it on our podcast, despite Siddhant and Nonu wanting me to do that. It's because I'll have to go into the fucking news, man.
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening in the world? That is too depressing, yaar. That is too depressing.
And that's a rabbit hole. If you're in there, you're just in there, man.
मुझे प्यास लग गई तो इसलिए मुझे पता है.
Well, like I have
a lot lately, so तुम लोग बात करो थोड़ी.
I have like withdrawn from watching news, following Jordan Peterson's advice. It was making me neurotic. Like उसकी first advice ये थी कि if क्या कहते हैं neurotic thoughts बहुत ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं ना, stop watching news. Cut it off completely.
Hey man, it's so much truth to that. Like, but I think Jordan spends a little too much time on Twitter for like his own liking.
That is true. That is, Twitter is blocked by accounts, so I cannot
Yeah.
even see that now. I cannot
Acha.
even go on Twitter. But like that was the one thing which was keeping me a little closer to the news. But now even that's off. So
I
I'm
also
happy
go
in
to
my
Twitter
life.
for news. Yeah, Twitter is a widespread of news and knowledge. देखा जाए तो.
Yeah. Again, obviously, social media maybe there's still this aspect of echo chambers, but yeah, if you're comparing it to the traditional models, yeah, it's still better.
Yeah.
But like, if I just want to, sorry, Nilesh, you have something to say?
No, go on.
So just tying it in, like we were speaking about this in a bit, but like, what do you think it is though? Like, I've been understanding, and you touched about it, that, and I think this is so true, is the fact that speech has to be free in society for societies to progress. So we were talking about Sam Harris a little bit before we started. He has this brilliant quote where he says that the only way societies can progress is through honest conversation. And that is just so true, because Jordan Peterson too talks about this aspect that the person you can't talk to, you have to go to war with them, if that makes sense. Because if you can't talk to them, there's no other way you can almost navigate a path through in the landscape, really. So what do you think about that? Because I see this not only happening in the traditional media, but on let's say these social media platforms as well. So not only is it a 60-year-old uncle who's, let's say, a BJP supporting person, and he cancels everyone who's, let's say, a millennial or someone, but it's the
Yeah.
same game that the millennials are playing. The
Yeah.
millennials are playing the same game, saying that, acha, he's that 60-year-old BJP supporting uncle, so why do I need to even talk to him, or something of that same sort, right? So
Yeah.
like, how does that make, like, isn't they're just playing the same game, isn't it?
I would say, that question basically connects both of the points. When you asked me if I had something to say, there was something I was going to say, but I didn't want to cut you off. And even the other thing, like when you're talking about free speech, well, first of all, it's the good and the bad of social media. When you give so much power to public, there is the good and there's the bad, and we can clearly see that. And also, I think one thing I don't like about social media is, like, it's great, you have a lot of power, you can do a lot of quote unquote justice. That's might not be real justice, but if it makes you feel better, go on. But the thing is, that always bothered me, reposting a story doesn't mean you're doing your part. Okay. And well, partly a lot of people say it is, and somewhere it can help too. And agar kuch galat hota in another country or in another state, and I cannot directly do anything about it, so yeah, it's great, I can repost it. But that's the problem. Even if something's happening in my neighbor, I might just repost a story and be like, I did my part. That's not doing
Yeah,
my part.
exactly.
People
And
write this on the caption as well. I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off. People write this on the
Yeah.
caption as well. If you cannot donate, if you cannot do this, just repost it on your story. Like,
and again, it
people give
has
you
its
this.
positives,
Yeah.
but don't fool yourself like that is doing your part is as easy as that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the second thing, when you're talking about free speech, and this again, I hate that we keep bringing Jordan Peterson up. It's almost like he'll walk from behind, like, why are you talking about me so much?
We had like 50 references already.
Exactly. But in his new book, which I'm reading, and I'm having a hard time reading that. Well, not only because of the ideas, but also because of my eyes. I'm having fucked up eyes, so I just cannot read more than 5 pages or something like right now. But anyways, in the book, again, in the first chapter, it's like, we think by talking. There's this line, we also think by talking, we often think by talking, or something like that. And that line really resonated with me. So I basically wrote a page and a half describing that line. And well, that's what good writing is, first of all, that you can take some words and find that much content in there. But that is very true. When I'm talking to you, I'm going to think about it later on, I'm going to think about it previously, and I'm going to think about it while I'm talking to you. And the questions will be like, if I'm telling you a story about, let's just, I'm telling you a story about my ex, right? And it's like, oh, this breakup happened and this, there will be questions in my mind. Okay, why did I leave that detail out? Why did I justify these things to Ishan when I didn't need to? Why am I justifying things for her or for myself? So these questions are going to bother you. But if you don't talk to anyone, these questions might really torment your subconscious.
Yeah.
So it's better to talk to someone and dealing with them consciously. And again, it's not exactly related to free speech. It was more of the power of talking. But as I said, I completely forget the question and I
No,
just
but
say
then
things.
that's in its essence free speech only, right? Because when we, and I think that's so true, like, because I think thinking is just speaking is is possible. I don't know if it's a lower order abstraction of thinking or if it's a higher order abstraction of thinking, because what it says is that what you're thinking is sort of trying to conceptualize it in words. I think it's a lower order because
I would say
Elon,
it definitely gives you a jump start about anything, like because as I said, we say a lot of things and we might have never considered them, but when we try to make them in a sentence, and it's hard.
It's so hard.
And then we are like, oh, holy shit. I thought I understood what this guy was talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't. And that's, I think we have to differentiate between, again, I don't have words for it because my, first of all, my vocabulary is shit. But the difference is like really like understanding something, किसी ने कुछ बोला video में, I understood it. That's what his word means. Or getting a real grasp of the ideas.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So if I have a real good grasp with the ideas, I can really explain it to you, and you have 10 questions and I'll answer 15 answers. But if I just heard something, I might have understood it, what he's saying. I have translated it in my mind, but I haven't really gotten a good grasp of the idea.
Just speaking to that, I mean, so there's this one of the most brilliant minds who've ever lived, Richard Feynman. He's talked about this whole concept. And I've mentioned this so many times on my podcast to the people who are listening in. I'm sorry if I'm repeating this again. He says that when you understand a concept or a theory or something of that sort, the only way you can sort of identify if you actually understand it is if you can almost abstract that whole theory or that concept into such a manner, distill it in such a manner that a 5-year-old can understand it, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter if it's the hardest or the most complex of ideas, but if you can almost distill it in such a way that a layman can then have a conversation with you and sort of then ask you, acha, then what does this mean? How does this happen? Or something like that. That's when you actually understand things. And just to stick on, and I'll shut up after this, is that you talked about so many of these other things which I can sort of link here. So Feynman said that his dad and he used to go to a park and he used to spot birds and things like that. So his father told him that, listen, there'll be so many people in society who'll know the names of these birds in this park, but there'll be 1 out of 100, let's say, who'd know what the features of each and every bird are. Which tree does this particular bird peck? How does this particular bird nest, or something like that? And I see so much relevance in that, in everything. So I often talk about this aspect of tribalism, and I can sort of relate it to, let's say, activism on social media. And hold on with me with this concept is the fact that, so I speak to so many of these people who call them, say, let's say, intersectional feminists or communists or something like that, just because they think it's fashionable, right?
Yeah.
And when I sit down to have a conversation with them, they don't even know the fundamental rubrics of, let's say, their ideology that they're following.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But just because another friend of hers or another friend of that person's is saying a certain thing on their social media handles, they'll just repost something or be saying that, oh, you go girl, you go boy, that's I'm for that as well. But they won't be able to hold a conversation with it and actually understand the fundamentals of that particular ideology. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in fact, there's so many things you just touched on. Like I'm not actually aware with them. Richard
Feynman.
Okay,
I've heard about him
look into
in I think Big Bang Theory or something. There's a reference there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a bad show. Anyway, one the first thing you talked about him, like when you can just explain an idea to a 5-year-old, that is so good that it is common sense now. That's how good something is, that it becomes common sense. And that basically reminded me of a conversation I was having last night. Exactly. It's like my mother was talking to my maid, right? And I say my maid because kaam wali seems like a disrespectful word, but she's not an educated person. So she didn't say, wasn't talking in English. She was like, कि हाँ tension से तुम्हारी body में कितना वो रहता है, like तुम्हारे दिमाग से. And I couldn't help but think, that's what Freud did. Before Freud, it was magic, it was woo-woo. But after Freud, it is like his discoveries and what he did was so good that it is common sense now.
Yeah.
And that's what basically reminded me of that thing. Exactly. It's like you can explain it to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
But I think it's
Yeah.
also which you talked about, Ishan, कि अगर कोई मतलब फ्रेंड कर रहा है तो हम भी करेंगे. तो like it, I was reading this book, Power of Habit. I think it's also part of a social habit. So like to be accepted as a part of a group. तो वो अपने आप like you have to do things.
Exactly. I would say even that's going on right now, because here's the thing. Ishan, we are on Ishan's podcast. Shout out. What I'm trying to say is subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe.
What I'm trying to say is like on our podcast, the Not Knowing podcast, subscribe to that too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I'm gonna get my
वो इसका plug अच्छा करेंगे.
I'm sorry. But so it's like we usually try to have conversations in Hindi. But because you own the authority, like it's your podcast we are on, we are all automatically switching to English. If we didn't discuss that, like we'll talk in English. So again, it's basically the same thing what Nonu was saying. Well, you have some sort of authority, plus we want to fit in.
Yeah.
And well, obviously we don't want to challenge you on your own podcast.
Yeah.
When did I become so wise?
It creeps up on you. But we do want to, fit in. Like
that's
true. Herd animals,
We just
we are social animals, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we see someone doing something, we do that shit. We
Yeah.
don't know if that's good or not, we do it.
We just do it, yeah.
Especially us Indians.
That's for sure. No, but just picking up on what Deepanshu and you've been talking about in this particular sense. So when you talk about joining a particular group, I think it's so deeply connected with this aspect of meaning. So we've been talking a lot about Jordan Peterson and those sorts of things. But so there's this other philosopher, Nietzsche, who also Jordan Peterson talks a lot about. So Nietzsche pointed this out in the 1900s, and I don't know how he got it back then, man. Like, how smart was he? So he said that God is dead, and he meant that
the ones who killed him.
and we've killed him basically.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
It is that sentence. It hits you.
Yeah.
And again, like you quoted Jung, people don't have ideas, ideas have people, and God is dead. We are the ones who've killed him. These things hit.
Yeah.
If you just listen to them as words, you don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
If you're trying to understand, these things hit. So yeah,
यार मतलब कितने dark वो है ना quotes, like you were also telling me, Nilesh bhaiya, कि you grow up when your father dies, something like that.
Oh,
yeah, that's like the Freud.
That's Freud. No, but there's something.
A boy can never be a man until his father dies, or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I think he said something like a man has 2 lives, and the second starts when his father, or something like that.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's the same gist.
It's basically, I think that is actually, I quoted it straight out of some Peterson's lecture, and he was like, Freud said, a boy can never be a man until his father dies, and Jung was like, no, that death can also be metaphorical.
Metaphor, yeah.
So yeah, exactly. But again, you just listen to it, you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? But then you have to understand, and there are things that people would rather not know, like the Oedipus complex and all of those things. So we can
no, I'm just so dude, I'm just so pumped because like we're like almost talking the same language, if that makes sense, because these are the things that I'm always thinking about 16-17 hours a day. So this is just great because I get to
yeah, for me it was more like as I said, I want to write more, I want to make films and everything. So for me, like philosophy and psychology was basically that is what I have to do. And that's what I'm trying to do.
No, man, but it's great though. But like just getting back to Nietzsche, if I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry for
it's a small topic of Nietzsche.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
but what Nietzsche talked about was that because let's say God is dead and we've killed him, and that he didn't mean it in a good way almost. He meant it in a derogatory way for society. And what he meant was that, and now it's over the secular world to decide on that higher order being, if that makes sense. And I see that so much in the world today, when people have almost moved away from, let's say, this aspect of God, whatever you may make of it, because I don't think people can actually ever get a finger on what God is or what God means for that matter. But they almost start associating themselves in these different ideologies and these different tribes to find meaning in their lives. I see that so much in sport. So sport is almost like, people have written about this, like sociologists, sports sociologists have written about how sport is almost a modern form of church in that sense. Because like in the West, it's more prominent, but I think it's same with cricket for the most part in India, that let's say men in this country wouldn't go to the temple, or like in the West wouldn't go to church, but they will vehemently go to, let's say, the stadium to support their team or to support their
Yeah.
country if you're talking about cricket. And that almost gives them a sense of community, a sense of meaning that they're working towards. And that's
Yeah.
the same thing with all these ideologies like communism or something like that. It's exciting from the onset, but actually when you get into it, there isn't actually anything there, if that makes sense. But it's still sort of, people who are short-sighted get the sense of, we're a part of a community, so hooray or something like that. I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, I totally. I think like you're saying, it's giving you a sense of the community. I was recently thinking about suicide bombers. That's what I do in my free time. But again, I'll talk a lot of shit which doesn't make sense to me or maybe anyone, but we like to pretend like it does. But here's the thing. I haven't experienced it, but I've heard from people who have done a lot of drugs or who've done a lot of meditation and all of those things. We are not the self, the ego is an illusion.
Yeah.
We all have heard that, right? And that's even there's this book I've been talking about this book so much lately. It's like The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Oh yes,
great fucking
yes,
book.
yes.
One of my favorite books. Recommended to everyone. Padho. So even in that book, he's like basically बहुत simple से diagram बना दिया. It's like this is the consciousness और उसके बीच में dot डाल दिया, this is the self or the ego or whatever. And for me, what I got from that is like suicide bombers. So if you just take that ego, if you just take that ego, so what I'm trying to say is basically, again, if we consider that we are not, the consciousness is the upper being and the self is the illusion of the consciousness, if we consider that possibility, then if you just change this illusion of self to that illusion of community, so suicide bombing is not really that off to me, because we do things for us, we'll do anything for our survival.
Mm-hmm.
And if just that, instead of that I, that becomes that community or whatever, if I don't exactly know how to put this in word, but if that is what represents my consciousness to me, the community, the being, the higher being, more than I, then suicide bombing is not that crazy.
Yeah.
So again,
and that's a really dark concept to wrap your head around.
Yeah. When you say suicide bombing is not that crazy, it's gonna
exactly
be and I was literally just thinking about it today, so I'm sorry because I don't have it that clear in my head right now.
No,
but yet.
Yeah,
but it's like you don't know na ki if higher being wants you to do it or not.
Well, again, it's another one of those things, because देखना, अगर if you're basically if that community is your self, let's say, to put it in simpler words, so whatever that community says, it is what the higher being wants.
Okay.
Simple as that. You're replacing your own consciousness, or what's the word? It's
so you're almost
conscience. You're replacing your own conscience with the community of with the conscience of the community.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't seem that crazy. It's like, I would try to save my newborn baby from anyone. It's simple as that. I don't know. I did that.
No, but dude, that's why like when Peterson talks about, and others have as well, that to abandon ideology, like it makes so much sense. Like,
exactly.
And I think that's what almost because it possesses people in such a manner that you don't know what you stand for. Because as you're talking about, right, you think that you have to put these things out, if it's Nazism, if it's communism, if it's Islamists for that matter, that thing almost encapsulates you so much that is what it is, and you're just trying to, I don't know, just trying to serve it in some sense. I don't know how to, not to sound too preachy or something, but that is what it is. Because like if you look at Stalin and those sorts of things, like I don't know if any lay person could have ever done that if it's not possessed by an ideology as such.
Exactly.
And when communists tell me that no, Stalinism wasn't proper communism or something, but like if you've actually read like some of the documents that have actually come out of the Soviet Union, like it's not just when he was talking in public, he was talking about all the bourgeoisie and this, like, and when he was going back to his people who he's working with, he was like, yeah, that stuff doesn't matter, we're just going to make money for ourselves and things like that. He was actually still talking about collectivizing agriculture and those sorts of things. Like that's how possessed he was. So that's what I sort of try to tell people, that like think for yourself however much that is possible, because everyone's formed of biases, right? And
Yeah.
we can't
Uh,
construct the world without biases, but just try to, however much that's possible.
Again, I think it's easy when you're listening to this podcast and you're like, oh yeah, Stalin was possessed by the ideas. The point we're trying to make is you are also possessed by the ideas, and
yeah.
so am I.
Yeah.
Grasp your head around that. Again, so in that sense, there's no difference in you or Bin Laden, in you or Stalin, and or in me or Stalin. In that sense, there is no difference if you're just possessed by the ideas, and there's only one way to get out of that pit, so to speak. So think more
And think more and write about it.
Oh yeah,
The best
That's true.
piece of advice. Yeah.
Journal
no,
it.
that's no, but it's actually so true though with writing. And like I would like to know your process, Nilesh, and the other people who do write as well, that because from what I've written and like when I sit down to write, I feel that I'm able to think more clearly, if I make sense, because it's sort of thinking only, but like on a page, or like on, if you're writing it down by hand, but you're able to sort of then articulate those thoughts in a better manner, so that when you do, and you actually sort of understand why you do things however simple that might
I
sound.
think for me, it's almost like, I don't know if we as humans know that or not yet, scientifically or not, but you can correct me if I'm wrong about it. I don't think we have an idea of how ideas exist in our brains.
Yeah.
Right. So I think most of the ideas we think we have, they're like, like the best ideas you have, they're right there with the muddy ideas you have. So I think, and this like a huge pile of fucking gober. And because it's very easy to get shitty ideas, and it's hard to get good ones. So obviously the shitty ideas might overpower the good ones, again, depending on your circle and everything, your experiences and all. For me, why writing clears it up, because it's like going into that gober and finding
picking
out the
out
nice
that-
things, putting them on the paper, and because you have put it on the paper, then you can see it in your mind कि अच्छा इस चीज को मैंने अब निकाल लिया उस गोबर में से,
You
that lump
crystallized
of
it.
ideas है. So now basically you have the good ideas here, or the clear ideas at least, and you still have a big pile of slump back in your mind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yaar. I'm sorry. I just cannot control myself.
No, it's so true though. Like, so just staying on that, like, and maybe we can connect it to just the way our mind functions in that sense, like with tendencies and let's say distractions and addictions that we may have. So like right now I'm reading like Gandhi by Ramchandra Guha, great book, like really thick, and really gets into his stuff in like India, and how he's changed the world pretty much when he came back from South Africa. So Gandhi says that, and I think there are many religious scholars in India and other religions as well who've talked about this, that so in like in a Bhagavad Gita context, or like in a Hindu context, he says that everyone has Ram and Ravan in them. Makes sense. So what means by what Gandhi means in this particular context is that it's on you to choose what you in your conscious think is right, and that may not all. We may think that that'd be difficult to differentiate what is right and what is wrong, but like with the people we've been talking about, Jordan Peterson and all these people, they say that you instinctively know what is right. Like you may think it's difficult, but like there are very few people who've trusted their conscience and they've gone like a long way. So there's been Socrates, like I don't know if you guys are well versed with his story, but like he, because of the way he was, he spoke truth, like he spoke true to the word. And what that means was that, like, I'm forgetting, but the higher order of aristocracy at that point wanted him out of the place, because that everyone started
basically
following
it was
him.
like, 6 months later we'll have a trial, either you leave Athens or
Yeah.
you're dying. So it was basically that. And even again, I think almost more than speaking the truth, he was more about asking questions. And just by asking questions like that, if someone asks me really good questions, I'm gonna have a tough
Thinking
time
about-
is what I was
yeah.
going to say.
Answering them, yeah.
I'm gonna have a very tough time, because most of our ideas are not that thought out. And I think those guys were like, he's corrupting the city against the city gods.
Yeah.
So, and he chose to die. I'm sorry for ruining
Ruining history for you.
I'm sorry. I tried to help with the story, but I sort of made it worse
No, it's
by giving the spoiler as jaldi se ye le, he dies. He chooses to die. But sorry, you were saying something about.
No,
sorry.
but go on.
Yeah, go on.
No, but that's basically it though, right? Like in the fact that we don't know, in the sense that people ask me, do you even think that these people existed in the past? So obviously there is reference as to Socrates lived obviously, Gandhi lived obviously. There's no there's no qualms about that. But then obviously with people like Buddha and Ram and Krishna and all these people, like it doesn't almost matter to me if they existed or not. They almost represent an ideal, and that ideal is to be followed, in my opinion. And that's how I look at not only religious people, let's say religious figures, but also fiction in that sense. Like really good fiction, deep fiction, that tells you about like how you should be in the world, right? Like going back to Ram, like you may think whatever it is, like with religion and that sort of stuff, but so there is this whole thing that religious scholars talk about. It's called Maryada Purushottam, which means that by essence, whatever Ram does is correct, is dharma, is that. And like if people start implementing that in their lives, I don't know like what like how good that would be for the individual, but also for society in that sense.
Like since you're talking about this, like you don't care if they were real or not. Actually, again, I've also
what do you mean by real?
That is a good question, first of all, because we can go into that, because I think
just a joke. Hey, one joke. Okay, so I think this was one meeting between Jordan Peterson and I think Dave Rubin, who's also a comedian. Okay. So I think this was a question they entertained from the audience. He said that if there was a boxing match between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, who would win? Jordan Peterson said, "Oh, that's a tough question. Sam Harris would win objectively, but I wouldn't win metaphysically."
Wow. Wow. That's a good one. Fucking question.
Yeah, but right? Go on. Sorry.
No, yeah. Actually, because you touch on real, even one way to describe real is that which sticks for a longer period of time. Because very easily when someone dies, we're like, again, when you talk about things, they are a little dark, because so someone died who I know and my family knows, right? And I heard someone like calling them and saying, did you take out the body? And I'm like, they just died 2 hours ago. And now we're calling them a body, not by the name or the person. So all of a sudden the person isn't real anymore. So again, one of the ways to define real is that which sticks for the longer period of time, I think.
That's how Darwin explained it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not at all well read about Darwin or even Nietzsche for that matter, but I'm trying, man.
Yeah. This is intellectually stimulating for me as well, man. This is stretching me to my limits.
It's fun though, right?
Yeah, it's really fun.
But yeah, because you were talking about it doesn't matter if they're real or not, Ram or all of those people. And I've thought about it, and because I think you've seen, I sort of hold art up to a pedestal, and that's how I think about it. It's like be it Gita, be it Ramayana, be it Mahabharata, I think it's art made by extremely intelligent philosophers, to teach you how to live, basically. And so I treat it as fiction, and the reason for that is I think it's better to treat it as fiction than it is to treat it as history. Because I think if you think about Mahabharata, so Duryodhan, he's the bad guy. If you think of think of it as a history, then you'll be like, oh, he's like Shahjahan ka beta Aurangzeb, matlab ganda hi aadmi tha. But if you think about it as fiction, okay, why is he that bad? You have all the data on him. Like he was born, and since then he was basically possessed by his mother's father, uske mama se, Shakuni mama. So when you think of it as fiction, you look deeper into it. Instead, if it's history, that's just something he did. If it's fiction, then why did the writer write him like that?
You don't think when you think of history, I think so.
Exactly, you don't think
it's
that
just
much,
out there. It's just knowledge.
Same as when you analyze the character Joker in Dark Knight.
Exactly.
Or any character, as a matter of fact.
I think part of what Siddhant says is also, related to the school mein hame kaise sikhaya jata hai history ko ratna.
Yeah, exactly.
So part of it is also that. But that's why I think about these mythological figures, I think it's better to treat them as fiction, because then you can take something out. Then you can take something out from the good and from the bad and from everything in the middle.
Yeah.
You can think why the writer wrote them like that. And to me, it's almost very clear that it is fiction, because the level of continuity from before Ramayana true after Mahabharat. The whole continuity with Bali, the whole continuity with Shravan Kumar and everything. That's better than anything Marvel you have seen.
Exactly.
If we talk about the MCU, it's nothing.
Yeah.
If you get into the
Dude, it's a whole universe.
HMU, Hindu mythological universe, then you'll realize that is what continuity is. And it goes beyond thousands of years. So yeah, that's why I think it's better to think of it as fiction.
Yeah, like, so some people have called almost fiction to be hyper real. That makes sense. Like, I think Jordan Peterson has this term, but even Jung, I think, talked about it in that sense, because like, so I'm forgetting the name now. Dude, I'm forgetting the name of the philosopher. So, but there was this philosopher. He said that science and philosophy, or like you could call it art in that sense, play two different roles in the world, and they give us two truths of how to look at the world, and they aren't the same. Like, we shouldn't be what's it called, like, we shouldn't be merging them together in that sense. And what he meant by that was, I'll get back to you with the name of the philosopher, because I don't know how I forget it. The thing is, for example, if there's a field in front of you which speaks to you in numbers, which speaks to you in facts, right, which are all equally true, like an objectivist or a materialist, if you speak to him, he'll say that, yeah, everything is scientifically true, right? Like, this particular width of that field is as true as the length of the field or something, right? But yes, that's objectively true, but then that wouldn't tell you how to get from point A to point B. If that makes sense. Yeah. There would be one path in that particular field which will get you from destination A to destination B. And that path which gets you from destination A to destination B is in definition more true than scientific truth. And that's a really it's something to grapple with, because
no, I get you.
So when I was talking about Darwin in that sense, and this is what Darwin actually pointed out, he said that, and as you said, a good way to conceptualize what is true or what is real is something that exists for a long period of time, right? Like something there's continuity, there's longevity to it. That's what Darwin said. He said that that is true. It is true that which selects, not that which is there in the objective world, that which selects. So what he meant by that was, for example, there are 10 things in the world. Okay, so there are 10 things in front of you. 10 figures, 10 beings, and whatever. But then three of those 10 almost are selected, like through the process of natural selection, selected to further their species, to further their offspring. So what that means is those three individuals or those three beings are more true than the rest of the 7 beings, even though the 7 beings have always been there. But these 3 things will be the ones that we focus on, and what would further our being, and we are just descendant of those 3 beings, for this way of speaking, really.
I think the same thing happened with Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris.
Yeah.
On their first podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that. So they start talking and they get stuck on what is true, and for the next hour or two they're talking about what is true or what is real or something like that. And Sam Harris is a bit more practical, and
he's
a bit more abstract, I guess.
Yeah, he's a materialist.
And Peterson is a bit more abstract, and that's why I lean towards Peterson more, because as I said, I'm trying to work on the creative field and it's all abstract there. But yeah, and they were stuck for like hours.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan had a more of a Darwin approach to it.
Yeah.
Based on how you describe Darwinism. Is stuck. Is it my internet or?
No,
yeah,
you were stuck
for a second.
You were stuck for a bit.
I think
you're back now.
Okay.
अब सही है
पर the बीच में भी हो रहा था when he was explaining about Darwin.
I was only getting the audio
and I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to lose him. I can't interrupt him right now. I'm like, shit, I'm gonna lose him, and I'm gonna be like, I think I know what
I was not naturally selected by
I was
objective
lose you, and
फिर stuck हो गया. There's some
there is
issue with your network, I think.
An issue.
Yeah.
Fluctuation on
Video stuttering.
Mine, I think I'm back now. Like I can hear everyone's fine. Like there was a bit of a problem in the middle, but now it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. हाँ एक बार पता ये भी हुआ था तू बोल रहा है तू रुक गया उसके बाद because the net is trying to catch up and I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
the audio
shit.
went like YouTube पे 2x कर दो ना किसी वीडियो में.
Oh shit, it's really gonna stuck. Well, anyways, I completely forgot what we were talking about.
Arey nahi, but no, that's great, man. Like it's fine. But just to pick on that, like, so when you were talking about, I think so. Yeah, that's true. So I think Jordan Peterson is a Darwinian in that sense, and Sam Harris is a Newtonian, and that's how what's it called? Peterson describes him is because for a Newtonian, everything that's there is equally true, and like that we're just acting on our impulses for the most part in the world. So like that was, I think that's the distinction when we have to make. But like even then, like that was just the first podcast they were on. They spoke for like on 4 destinations, 2.5 hours each, and they still couldn't have come to a conclusion.
So yeah, but yeah, so what you were talking about, you know, the analogy you gave about the field of being scientifically true and you know, philosophically true about how you can get there. I think Aristotle made a good distinction between those. I don't know. In the Republic, Plato basically wrote, like, in the perfect city, there would be no art, right? So Aristotle basically wrote the Poetics as a fuck you, Plato. Art is important. And, see, by the way, you know, as I was saying this, fuck you, Plato, I felt a little bad, but I think I have to normalize those names a little bit so that people wouldn't be intimidated by those names, because people do. You know, if I've never heard of Socrates, Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, I would be like, what the fuck are they talking about? Are these people
He might be a warrior.
Yeah, so Aristotle basically, the counter argument of Aristotle was, you know, science or history, like art is more important than history, because history can teach you what has happened and art can teach you what could happen. So in that sense, art is much more important than history. So I think I like put it so simply that I'm a big fan of Aristotle. Can you say that like you're a fan of an ancient philosopher?
Yeah, of course, man. Like,
but it's like, you know, again, like we were talking about, some things are so true, and it also, you know, relates with two things are not equally true, but some things are true, so true, like Freud coming up with the things which are common sense now. Aristotle, you know, about, you know, 2500 years or something like that, he wrote this Poetics, which is I watch a lot of interviews of Hollywood writers, Oscar winning writers, and they're like, one screenwriting book you have to read, and that is Poetics by Aristotle. And you know, some things are so true that they almost cannot be denied.
Yeah,
the dude wrote it 2500 years ago. They are using those principles today in Hollywood. And yeah, I just think, I don't think, yes, I don't think almost that.
What were they smoking when they were writing?
Oh, they were high on oxygen. There was too much oxygen.
I mean, that's what, dude, that's what the Haryana boys probably aren't thinking, aren't philosophizing, man. There's no oxygen only in Delhi. That's why we guys are only in the gym, man.
Oh, that's a dig. That's you probably don't know this, but no here is a powerlifter.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
man.
that's me.
There's a lot of wrong things with people staying in the gym only. But
I'm not one of those guys. I'm here. That's why I do podcast.
Just won a competition, so yeah, you know.
Oh, congratulations.
So he's doing
Thank you,
good.
thank you guys.
So yeah, we don't talk shit about gym. we do.
But that's so true, because like Plato and Aristotle almost depicted that. Like there's this very famous painting in Athens. I'm forgetting which one it is, but there's like the picture in the center of it is Aristotle and Plato is pointing towards the earth, and Aristotle is pointing towards the sky, and that just depicts their philosophy in like, yeah, that's their philosophy pretty much. So yeah, man, like
I think it might be Aristotle would be on the earth. I'm not sure. Again,
no,
I'm not
Aristotle
sure.
would be in the sky, because he felt obviously there is something to the transcendent and something we should always be aspiring towards. That
again, I'm not sure. It's easy to confuse.
Yeah.
It is for me. For dumb people, it's easy to confuse those things. Not for Ishan though. So I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll look it up again. I'll probably put a picture over here on the podcast, but yeah.
अरे अब तो मैं गलत प्रूव हो रहा हूँ. Shit. बेइज्जती होगी. मैं जा रहा हूँ. Goodbye. अच्छा मैं लैपटॉप पे हाथ रखने वाला था, कैमरा इस तरह.
But we've been talking a lot about philosophy, and it's so interesting. But something I sort of
And I'm
wanted
sorry
to,
for that.
but something I wanted to ask you guys as well. Like with the few conversations you have had on your podcast, like what have been some key takeaways? Like you talked about like your interaction with Neon Man, and I call him Neon Man as well, just like everybody else, but like Ayush.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, he spoke about these things as well. Like you guys touched upon some really important aspects such as cancel culture and things like that, which we have sort of
Yeah.
touched about today. But yeah, similarly, like what have been some other takeaways like you've had through conversations amongst the three of you, but even with the guests that that you guys have had on?
Well,
Never
I've been
have
speaking so much, so I
technical
guess
difficulties.
I've been speaking so much lately, so I guess
Yeah, so
सिद्धांत
my
का गेमिंग नेम बेकन है, तो मेरे मुंह से ना बार-बार बेकन निकल
Bacon,
बेकन
जाता है.
निकल
हाँ.
जाता है. Yes. So the key takeaways from the general key takeaway would be thinking more. Like when you think more, you just tend to flow the conversation. You just
Yeah.
tend to accept more ideas, new ideas. You're just listening in the moment. You're listening there. And from the Neon Man part, we were like the key takeaway which we put it out on the podcast as well, which was you just see the success. Like you just see that he has 2 million followers, but he just told us that he failed 3 YouTube channels before getting to those 2 million followers. So yeah, the key takeaway from his conversation would be that like you need to hustle more, you need to strive more with your goal, you need to be clear with your goal, and you just need to work towards it. So yeah, the key takeaway from his conversation would be that.
And I think like I'll add to what Bacon said. So like मतलब मेरे साथ क्या हुआ है, like I am more open to hearing people's opinions, जैसे जो भी होता है, and then like think about it afterwards, and then write about it afterwards, and like critically think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And,
I need to add to it. Sorry, Nilesh.
हाँ,
So
go on.
Nilesh and I were
यही
having
करते
a
रहे.
conversation about Nilesh and I were having a conversation about where will this podcast go. So we were actually thinking of a backup plan, like if this fails. So then I was like, if it fails, the takeaway would be that I am more open, like I am more extrovert in the sense, like I am more open to setting my ideas, like selling my ideas, or just being more extrovert, I say. Yeah, so that's what the whole idea, if the podcast fails, is that's my personal development.
No man, you
Like,
guys are going
these guys,
strong.
yeah.
Yeah, the same thing we were saying, like अगर podcast कर रहे हो तो a host is definitely getting something good out of it. Not in this episode particularly, but generally. I guess I'll keep it short because I'm sure people are tired of listening to my voice right now. But I think because you were talking about cancel culture, I think it might be worth it to study a bit of Western culture right now, because it happens all the time. Something happens in the West, a couple of years later it's happening here, and we keep on doing that for some reason without exactly understanding the consequences. So I think cancel culture is one of those things. And again, I'm not saying all the consequences will be bad, but in the West, it's been it's been quite a while since they've been believing in guilty until proven innocent, instead of innocent until proven guilty.
Otherwise,
That's
yeah.
basically what cancel culture means. Guilty until proven innocence. I put a throw out an allegation towards you, and basically you're cancelled.
No, but sorry to cut you off here, but like when you say something like that, like guilty until proven innocent, in that sense, who is taking that almost that authority to say that he is innocent or she is innocent or that individual is innocent? Because you've already cancelled
the public. Oh, I'm sorry.
But you've already cancelled that person from the onset, right? Like, so
Yeah.
if I don't know, like if a group of people have already cancelled that particular individual, then how is justice going to prevail? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we don't instinctively know what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's true. And in fact, the thing is, again, you sort of got cut off. So again, I might say
I'm
something
sorry.
else.
Sorry.
But no, it's totally fine. But yeah, it's mostly the quote of the people, or what is it called? The quote of the public, or so basically, if someone throws an allegation and you're an entertainer, right? You basically make your living off of the public wanting to listen to you, wanting to watch you.
Mhm.
And someone throws an allegation and the public is like, oh, this guy's a fucking dickhead, let's cancel him.
Yeah.
The public has cancelled him. The you know So it doesn't really matter if he actually did it or not. In some cases they are able to bounce back. And it's just that, I think, again, the easier way to describe what I'm trying to say is, for example, Brian Cannon, he's a comedian. You probably know him because you watch Joe Rogan. So yeah, he also has a podcast, had a podcast, Fighter and the Kid, right? And he got some allegations thrown at him, and he got cancelled. Cancelled in the sense that he had to quit the Fighter and the Kid, the podcast he basically
Oh.
built from the bottom
Yeah.
with his best friend, or I don't know, his good friend, Brendan Schaub. And the thing is, he had to leave it because if he didn't leave, they would lose all their sponsors. And now again, and the worst thing is, the people who threw allegations at him didn't do a police case. They didn't
Yeah.
go to the court. It just, he did that in 1990 fucking whatever. And well, I'm glad that he's back, but a lot of people just lose their entire livelihoods based on that.
So I have an example for this. Like I have said it on the podcast as well. So we know about AIB, right? The AIB got cancelled, and then there's this guy called Utsav. I was recently listening to his podcast. He was cancelled because he was allegated with, like, he said that he sent a dick pic to a minor. He got cancelled about it, and then those allegations weren't proven. And then he put out some recordings of the girl threatening him that if you don't if you don't accept it, I'll probably put some more allegations on you because my sister is a lawyer or something. So he's now on podcasts and everything, but his whole career is ruined. He's like thrown out of the comedy scene, and he's just now on different podcasts explaining what happened.
Yeah.
Because people cancelled him so bad that he cannot just go out and explain his part to everyone. You get my point?
Yeah.
And I would add one last thing here, because again, I wouldn't expect everyone to go out and read the entire Western culture, just because I said so. So yeah, from what I know, as I said, I've been staying away from the news for a long time, but from what I know, there are two things to be worried about, which is cancel culture and the divorce culture, which is, a threat, I guess, almost. Because it's a threat, because divorce is, it is a right for every human being to get divorced, right? And it should always be, but it's also very easy to misuse that power, and you can see that happening in the West right now. I had another thing which I forgot, so
No. So that was something I wanted to pick up on, but then you guys have touched upon some really interesting topics which I would like to entertain as well. So just with that comedian example, let's say, there's obviously a monetary aspect to it, which is obviously so important to everyone in every individual's life, right? But then there's also this aspect of, for example, especially if you're a public personality, if you are always in front of the public, if you're a comedian, a podcaster, or something of that sort, then there's a very, not only for a monetary aspect, but that's your life pretty much. So if someone takes that away from you, like, you don't know, like, I think I'm dropping off as well, but but I'll try to explain it again. But like, I don't know how much that plays to that person's mental health almost, because there have been several studies done as to people who have been, let's say, these public intellectuals, public people, and they've been taken out, let's say, from the public viewing, from the public eye. That's affected them really badly in terms of their mental health, and it's been sometimes really hard for them to recover in that sort. So that's something that people often don't consider.
Yeah. So it took him about 1 year to get back with all the proofs and everything, with all the recordings. So I think that 1 year would be so difficult for him.
Yeah.
Like, just being cancelled by his friends also. Like people don't really check what happened.
Yeah.
His close friend would have texted him, bro, what did you do? Yeah. So that's what my point is. Like, you are just being said shit from all this, all the environment around you is throwing shit at you, and you just have no place to go. Yeah. So I think that would be really hard for him.
No, man, for sure. Yeah.
A similar thing happened to a non-celebrity, and it's not about cancel culture. It's about false allegation. It's like this guy, it's an old news story again, and I'll fuck up the details, so forgive me for that. But the guy was dropping a girl off, a woman, she wasn't a minor, right, from his office, right? He dropped her off, came back to the office. The next thing he knows, uh, she says, this guy raped me, after a long time,
Oh.
right? And the guy goes straight to the prison. And here's the interesting bit: the guy had security cameras in his office, which proved that he couldn't have raped her at that time.
Oh.
No one cared to look at it for 6 months.
God.
The fuck?
He was just in the prison. And dude, once you're in the prison for rape, you are a
Yeah,
rapist
yeah.
in public's eye, right?
Uh,
And again, I'm sorry for fucking up the details. I'm pretty sure I did. But again, it's again not exactly related to cancel culture, but yeah, we need to be careful.
And you
about,
see that Sardarji wala case, that rape case,
हाँ,
where girl,
we need
like,
to
a
be careful
fake case.
about
Huh?
just naming people guilty until proven
Yeah,
innocent
yeah.
in the public eye. So yeah.
Yeah, all these tags that people throw out on social media, like believe all women or believe all this, believe all that, like like you can't, because even if for the most part women are nice, women are good, like there are going to be
Yeah.
some people, and that's with everybody, right? Like there are
Yeah.
going to be some people who are just going to be specimens, and they're going to be misusing their, let's say, power if you've given to them in that sense.
I think I don't know. Again, it's not exactly related to what you're saying, but I'm very optimistic about people,
Yeah.
because call it me being naive, and in a sense it makes sense because listen, I'm the least educated guy in the group right now. Okay, I didn't
No.
really go to a college, or uh, let's not talk about my education. It's all messy thing right there, right? So I haven't met a lot of people, is what I'm trying to say. But still, I haven't really met a person who I would be like, that's a really bad person. So most people are just nice. They might have different experiences, different ideas, and it's not exactly their fault.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I like people, man. I
Well,
think
well,
most
that
of the people are really
justifies
nice, but
that
we
justifies your thinking about suicide bombers.
but that is true, because when you go believe all women, we also have to acknowledge the fact there are those little people who are just awful. And again, I'm not saying it's their fault they're awful. It's everything that happened with them
Mm.
happened to them. It's blah blah blah. I'm not going to go into that shit. But yes, there are some people who you would just look at and from the lazy eye,
Mhm.
and what they did, and you'll be like, they're awful. I haven't met a person like that, but I'm sure they exist, and we have to acknowledge that when we're saying believe all women, or but there are, you shouldn't
Marcus
believe all
Aurelius right
women.
there.
like वो जो कहता है, Bill Burr has a nice bit about it, like believe all women, like all of them. There are crazy ones.
Good God. And just to play devil's advocate, what often, I don't want to call them feminists as such, but what often people who do say that it is still better to, let's say, believe all women, is because through the historical controversies and through the historical atrocities that these women have faced, it's fine if a few men go to prison for the larger good of society.
We'll take
First
one
of
for
all-
the team.
First of all, these women aren't the one who faced all of those shit, all of that shit.
Yeah.
And you cannot hold entire species or even entire race
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
what their pardada did,
Yeah.
for their ancestors. I don't think it's a good thing to do.
Do, but that's
ये वही
not-
बात हो गई ना, हिटलर का बेटा हिटलर ही होगा. हाँ?
Well, if he grows up with Hitler, you never know.
Yeah. See, but that's another thing that sort of frustrates me about, let's say, the woke types, is almost to say that whenever you almost head into a conversation with them, they'll always put you in a position to say that, yeah, but you can only say this because you're XYZ, you're privileged in this.
Hmm.
So they aren't even so what's it called, interested in having the conversation. It's to almost point out that, acha, because you're privileged in so many factors, having a conversation with you is irrelevant because you won't even understand. Like that's their sort of, I'm not going to say this is all let's say the woke types, but there's so many of them who I speak to who have this sort of mindset then when they come into conversations, which is
I I think, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I think they don't look at it as a conversation. They look at it as a place to win. Like
Yeah,
I'm gonna win over it.
Yeah.
Like I'm
exactly.
gonna throw something at him. Like I'll throw something from the history and I'll say that
Oh,
you
ye
don't
le.
know about it.
To-
Yeah, ye le, ek aur
to
le.
make him my
ये
bitch.
जूलियस
So-
बटलर नहीं पढ़ा क्या ये मुझे
Yeah.
फुको
Yeah, so it's not a conversation, it's more
Yeah.
of a competition,
yeah
I'll say.
yeah
Uh,
see but then like I don't know like how productive that is, because the thing is, and like I'm quoting Sam Harris again, like he says that when you head in when he heads into a conversation, he would concede conversations if he knows that, let's say, he's losing out a conversation, in the sense that he identifies that the argument the other side is putting out obviously goes against the point he made, and obviously he's been made to look like a loser. So he will almost accept that, rather than almost playing this ideological game where I
Yeah.
represent this side, so I will vehemently fight again for this side no matter what happens. That's-
exactly the same thing. The same thing happened with Peterson, the interview you were talking about, where they cut out the most of it. And
Oh yeah.
Peterson basically, said it's not a good idea to force speakers to bake cake for gay weddings. And Jim Jeffries, I think, said, the same thing happened with black people. And it worked out. And Peterson said, well, yes, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't thought about it enough. And they just put that in there. Again, that's
Oh.
another dig at traditional media. But yes, that is what you're supposed to do in a conversation.
Yeah.
And again, I think you probably are aware of him, Steven Crowder.
Mhm.
And he has this great show, which is entertaining for some reason. It shouldn't be entertaining, that show. That show shouldn't be entertaining, but because people don't think about shit and just carry it on, it is entertaining. It's like he would write something extremely controversial and he would be like, change my mind. So in the US, where we have the most rapes of all countries, he would write, rape culture is a myth, change my mind. And well, and again, it's a very nice conversation. The whole point of the show is like, we wouldn't cut anything out like the traditional media. We'll put out the whole conversation. If we put something from you out, we'll put out the whole uncut conversation. And I don't remember exactly, but is that girl who was, unfortunately probably been raped or something like that, she said something, have you been raped? And he was like, no. Then she's like, then you don't get to talk about it. He's like, well, my house also has never been on fire. It doesn't mean I don't know it's bad. It's I don't think it's a valid argument that if it hasn't happened to you, you cannot talk about it.
Yeah.
Because then you will never go beyond your experiences, and your experiences are extremely limited, especially by your age.
Yeah.
So wait, I don't think it's a good argument.
Also another thing that I think about, I don't know if I made my mind up on it, is the fact that so there are some people. So okay, so if we want to take Jack Dorsey as an example, so obviously at Twitter he says that he
completely lost you, Sharma. Completely lost you.
Okay.
For a second.
So I was focusing on. Am I audible now? Am I? Sorry, I'm so sorry about these.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I'll try to
No, it's
fix
totally
things
fine.
up in the post production, however much that's possible. But what I was talking about with Jack Dorsey was that he almost wants a Wild West Twitter. So what he means by that is, whatever your opinions are, just throw them out there. But he's sort of against what, however, like the censorship that even Twitter has started to implement nowadays. So he's against that, but he can't do anything because of the executives and things that are in place at Twitter. So the sort of question I sort of want to pose here is that, do you think there's some ideas, some opinions, some things that shouldn't be there? Like it's better for society that something should be censored, and it shouldn't always be that, however much we may want there to be free exchange of ideas, there are some ideas which are so, how do I say, which are so detrimental to society, let's say, that we shouldn't have them. And this is a very contrarian view to how I usually hold, because I'm very liberal in that sense. I want as many people to voice their opinions, however radical you may consider them to be. But do you guys think that there should be some ideas which should be, let's say, capped?
All right, like, should I start?
Yeah.
Look, I'm too worried that I'm speaking a lot.
No.
No,
I'm worried about it. But I think, plus my voice doesn't sound very good. Like generally, nothing's wrong right now. It's generally a bad sounding voice. So the thing is, it's again an ill-informed, or what's the word? Whatever that is, I haven't thought it through. But as you are, formulating the question, I could think of this one thing. I understand where you're coming from, that if you stopped Hitler's idea,
Right.
there would be no world war probably, or something like that. I understand that, but I think it's a bigger risk almost,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
once you try to censor it, it almost gives the idea more power.
Hmm.
And it's very basic thing that happens to us. You're not, let's say you're not supposed to laugh in a class. What happens? A stupid joke makes you laugh a lot. When you're not supposed to do something, you want to do it more. So I think censoring the ideas might give it a bit more power. That's the risk. But I do understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No, I fall in the same boat as far as I have thought about it as yet. Maybe it's similar to the question I have posed right now, but maybe if it's slightly different, do tell me. Like, the thing I'm trying to understand here is that, do you think if there are some facts, if there are some things that we as societies know, for example, I could just throw an example here. Okay, what if as a society, as a species, we identify that there are some races that are superior to others? If that's just something we find out, like scientists find out, if there's something like that, would it be beneficial for society to almost entertain that, to say that yes, this is scientific truth that we've almost discovered through these things? Or is it almost better to brush that aside? I guess this is in line with the Hitler argument as well, but is it almost better to brush that aside because that may cause more harm than good? For example, so that may disenfranchise some races or whatever. What I think, and maybe you guys can add to that, is we should still let that scientific truth be put out, because if we don't, then pseudoscientists will come in and have their definitions to it.
So like, again, I'm going to try to dub it down very much, and I might end up being incorrect doing that. But it's almost like having black NBA and white NBA, because they're just so much better at it. And again, I'm sure I'm sounding rude right now, but I think what you're saying exactly is almost like scientists figure out, okay, this race is better, but then again, better at what? There are a lot of different elements to that.
Parameters, ways to
Physical
assess,
attributes, mental attributes.
Exactly. So then again, if a country decides, well, this particular race, enter racism here, is better at physically, and they are taller, they are stronger, and they are more athletic. Look, I'm not a racist, but it sounds like a African American person almost in the context of America. But and that country uses them just for being the soldiers. That's very wrong ethically. But what we would think, because obviously there are people who don't want to be the soldiers, but that country might have the best army,
right?
And that is exactly the argument of, again, going philosophy. It's
that's
like,
what was talked
Plato,
about
the
it.
Republic.
Republic, I was getting
that's,
on.
making the best city possible. तो वो तो खैर अलग ही बात कर रहे थे. वो तो ये कह रहे थे कि country के पास सब city के पास सबकी details होंगी, and we'll match the best genetics, male and female, to create the best warriors, to create these people, and they can also control incest ना हो जिससे. So they because उसकी perfect city में, perfect meaning most functional city, sorry, में there would be no parents. You wouldn't think that you have parents. You are just children of the city. So you are just working for the city. So you have the best soldiers, you have the best farmers, and there is no concept of money. But the other cities are helping you because you're providing them with the best farmers,
soldiers or farmers.
You are helping them with that. And again, the only reason I bring this to you is this debate has been going on for thousands of years. Censorship is the same thing, and this I don't know what to call it, this question that you just formulated. Not sure how to categorize it, but this question is also been going on for thousands of years. So yeah, kind of a difficult question.
It's really difficult, isn't it? So, like, maybe this is a tangent and something else that I'd like to explore. So a bit earlier, I asked you guys about like some of the takeaways you've had through the conversation you guys have taken, and I don't know if we were talking about it on like when we started off, but because it's been a while since we started, but or before when we were chatting. But it's this aspect of society, and maybe we have already spoken a little bit about this with people starting to associate to groups which may not always allow them to think independently for themselves. What my particular thing is, do you think the medium of podcasting in itself is so magical, because I've fallen in love with it because it's long form conversation. You sit, you, it allows you to sit down and actually understand where the other people are coming from. But do you think that that's still a very minority of people who do enjoy long form podcasts? Rest of the people are probably more into TikToks and those sorts of things. Like, that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Like, do you guys think about this?
Yeah, so
Yes.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
we
wouldn't
do.
go on.
And
Go on, Siddhant. I'm sorry.
yeah, I have this thing also, like YouTube has recently introduced shorts, where you put up 15 to 20 seconds of reels,
It's basically reels only.
Instagram
Yeah,
kind,
yeah.
yeah, kind of content. So I think that will also decrease the time attention of the people, like the span attention of the people. So I think this is a threat to our community, the podcasting community, that they have introduced reels and everything. But yeah, I think people don't really engage into conversations until unless they really have a knack for it. So I think this is gonna boom,
Mhm.
but let's see what happens. And with YouTube introducing shorts, I don't think so. It's a right move.
Guys, I'm sorry for cutting you off right now. Actually, I can hear you, but my camera is about to die. So you guys continue the conversation. I'm hearing,
ठीक
and
है,
let me
ठीक
just
है.
change the
Yeah, yeah.
battery.
No
Again, I'm
worries,
sorry
no
for
worries,
that.
no
Okay.
worries. Yeah, but Siddhant, on that though, like, another thing I find really fascinating about YouTube though, and this was one of the gutting reasons why I wasn't happy when Joe Rogan signed the deal with Spotify,
Yeah.
is because like, I consume a lot more YouTube than I do Spotify. Like, if I'm
Yeah.
watching video content, obviously. But not only that, that's one reason. But another secondary reason is that I don't think there's another platform like YouTube which allows you to almost YouTube is almost like it's a time machine. It's
Yeah.
like a video time machine, if that makes
You
sense.
can actually watch videos from 9 and 10 years back and then just
Yeah, yeah. It's
get
and
blown by
it's all
it.
through like a search. Obviously, you can do that through Spotify and stuff, but it's just so much more easier through YouTube. And there's
Yeah.
all forms of content is there. So it's not only specifically if I want to go for Joe Rogan. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
if I want to watch Joe Rogan as well, I can search for it on YouTube. But I may discover someone else who is another good, let's say, a spokesperson or intellectual in that sort.
Yeah.
Which was my general qualm with it.
Even the YouTube recommendations,
Huh.
they give you a lot of good recommendations where you can just find similar videos with it. But with Spotify, I haven't really used Spotify that much, and for the Joe Rogan thing, I don't really use
Yeah, yeah.
Spotify. I don't really use Spotify, so on YouTube only I watch Joe Rogan. And yeah, it
Yeah,
is
it's
sad that he
bumming.
signed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sad that he
I
signed the
mean,
deal with
but it's so
Spotify.
great though. Like we were talking about these intellectuals like Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, and all those things. But just think about it. Like, for the matter, obviously, in some circles, Jordan Peterson is very controversial. Like, when I've spoken to some of my friends as well, some of them really don't like him. Like, some of these feminists and all those people. Okay, but then just think about it in that sense. Like, and I'm not really talking about Jordan Peterson, but there's so many of these other educators and so many of these other professors who are putting out these really deep intellectual content on YouTube. Like, that the lecture series that they would deliver at MIT, Stanford is being put out for free on YouTube. So if there's a person in like Bangladesh or like some part of India, like Assam or somewhere, where they don't have these facilities, if they have internet connection and the power of YouTube, they can access that information, which is so powerful. Like, that's
Yeah.
That's the thing. Can you hear me? And CB?
yeah, you're back. Yeah,
Again,
great.
sorry
back.
for
Yeah.
the whole battery thing. But that's what I recently, na, Siddhant and I guess Ayush, they were talking about a bit the blockchain. And no, I'm sorry. We were talking offline. Siddhant was talking to another friend of ours about blockchain, and this is I think, viral idea right now that blockchain is the next internet. That's how big it's going to be, and it's again another thing which I'm talking shit from my mouth because I haven't thought it through very well. But I sort of disagree with that. The reason for that being, like, internet is bringing you information.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, most of the people on the internet are not क्या कहते हैं, looking for information. Internet was basically, got
Porn.
popular because of porn. Exactly. And but wait, again, now this is where I can see the Pareto's distribution 80-20 rule. The 20% of the people who are basically taking the important things, and they are doing the 80% of the inventions and all, whatever you want to say. So that's it's almost very I sort of get stressed about this. All the information you want is available, and most of it is for free.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then you
And,
just go on to watch Radhe's
Ah.
trailer and so on. Like,
Bro, I doubt your optimism about people.
and Patik, it's basically the same thing. When we were talking, you guys were talking about, look, people are more interested in TikTok than
hmm.
podcast and everything.
I don't know. That's my general guess.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so too. Like,
Generally, people are more, and I think the statistics sort of agree with
yeah,
that.
show that too.
I think so. Hana? I think again, this is something I don't know, but this might be a possibility that first of all, TikToks don't require you to think, right? They're just basically your pastime while you're traveling to work. मैंने देखा लोग मेट्रो में से टिकटॉक्स वगैरह देखते हुए स्क्रॉल करते, मैं यही कर रहा हूँ, स्क्रॉल करते हुए they would be going on their way. And I think again the problem comes when you think that's all your life is, that you have to go to work, you have to take care of your family, and then you're going to die, and that's it. But if we consider the possibility that our life could be a little bit more than that, and it again connects to taking responsibilities, like maybe one of the things we are here to do is serve humankind.
Yep.
And hopefully make it a little better. Then you might think, okay, maybe I need to make myself good enough to be able to do that. Like a soldier would make him good enough to be in war. So I think it's the same thing. If you consider that, and if you're more on that side, like, yes, we are not only here for ourselves, and I think Sam Harris has a great argument about it, like how humans, from sharing basically develop. Won't go into that argument. But if you consider that, which I do, then you would go like in this informational things, and
even if you don't
to make
like
humankind better.
like even if you don't think about doing it for the world, think about doing it for your next generation. That would automatically like make the world a better place, right?
But Deepanshu and Nilesh, for that matter, like, even if when some people may think it's sort of selfish that you're only thinking about taking responsibility for yourself and making yourself better, but like I've often spoken about this, that the only way you can serve society, in my estimation, is when you become better. So if once you understand what you stand for, only then can you, let's say, go and become an activist or whatever, because only then will you sort of understand like which values you stand for and which you don't agree with, right?
I think I was sort of trying to say the same thing, but I might have emphasized on the different points, but that's what I meant, when I'm going like you have to prepare yourself. And again, another thing that connects here is fucking Peterson again. It's like even when you're just thinking about yourself, you're probably not selfish, because you're thinking about your future self, which is not the yourself you are right now. And but again, there has to be that difference in the mindset. There has to be that switch. Jab tak ye hai ke this is all my life is, and we get lost in habits. It's very easy for anyone to get lost in habits, and I understand for everyone who does that. And again, I'm not saying like I'm the righteous one, I'm the right here, and you're the wrong. I don't fucking know, man. Maybe
maybe we're speaking shit.
Share.
Maybe we're speaking shit, and the people who are making TikToks are the people who should be leading us anyhow. Like maybe they know. See, maybe Nilesh, maybe we're just stupid, man. Maybe we just know. Wait, why are these guys making like 3-hour-long conversations for like who no one listens to? Make 15-second clips, man. Everyone listens. Everyone likes it.
I want to agree with you seriously,
maybe they.
But I cannot agree with you. Seriously, I can only agree with you ironically, like you were saying it. But maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe dogs know quantum. Maybe dogs know quantum physics and they just don't share it because they're like,
Dude,
look at this stupid.
Fucking sea world. That freaks me out. There are creatures in sea world who might be smarter than us.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
That
Like
freaks me out.
dolphins.
Dolphins know, man. They know their shit.
They have their fucking language which we cannot decode. And again, that's also from fucking Joe Rogan. I think that's where I heard it from. But that freaks me out.
Oh yeah, for sure, man.
But I don't think dolphins are smarter than us. The reason for that is that we can hold them captive and they cannot hold us captive. So I don't think they're smarter than us. Or maybe they're just too nice.
Possibly,
But anyways.
But maybe just throwing this thought experiment out there. Like, what do you think? Would we even know? For example, like, what if we're just ants? Like, for that matter, if, for example, if there are ants going together in a colony, they don't know, I think so at least, that there are like these buildings which are like 20 floors high, which are around them. what if we are just some form of ants and they're like much larger beings, which we almost can never notice because of the asymmetry of the world? Like, do you guys think about these things?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility that our entire universe is in a black hole, which is part of
In a-
another universe, which is part of
in a
another universe, and that's how small we are.
Well,
and
we've
that
got
goes on
another
to
conspiracy
infinity,
theorist.
and that ends up being a single cell. Maybe that's what cell really is. Definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Again, I got that from Joe Rogan stand-up
Joe
as well,
Rogan,
and
there you go.
he was like, maybe that cell is lying in some guy's balls,
Yeah.
and so another universe begins. Definitely a fucking possibility, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, you never know. But what do you guys think about the simulation theory though? Like, are you well versed with that? Do you think we're
I'm
living in a
just-
simulation?
I just know the sort of the definition. Like we are living in the sort of GTA world.
Yeah.
Again, I think
I know
it's one
just
of
the
those.
Matrix जैसा कुछ है.
Huh.
Exactly. I think it's one of those unfalsifiables. I think is that a word?
Yeah.
There's another theory which is like the last Thursday or last Tuesday theory,
Okay.
which is basically it's more of a troll theory, I think, but it definitely exists.
What is
It's
it? What
like
is it? Sorry, I'm not well versed. What is it? What are the
Yeah.
crux?
Yeah. If I tell you that the whole universe was just created last Thursday,
Okay.
and all of the memories in your brain was planted, everything you know was planted, and the whole for everyone, the whole universe was just created last Thursday, and there's no way to falsify that.
Yeah.
Like, अरे नहीं मैं तो 90s में पैदा हुआ था. That's a memory you planted, bitch. So again, that's why I think it's a troll theory, but unfalsifiable.
Yeah. That's what I think as well with the simulation theory. But like another thing I do think, and this is something I've picked up through Nick Bostrom. Obviously, he's the one who propagated the simulation theory. So he's like the scholar at Oxford.
Yeah.
So he said that if you look at civilizations, inevitably, and maybe I do agree with this, there will come a point, like right now as well, with the advancements in technology, in science, with our obsession with, let's say, these digital phones, these things, even us right now, we're commuting through a portal, right? Like through a Zoom portal. So I'm seeing like 2D, I'm seeing 2D, what's it called? I'm seeing 2D definitions of you, even though you're 3D beings, but like I'm speaking to your 2D versions, if that makes sense. So what is to say that in the future, like the portal in itself would be more encapsulating than the world, and in that sense we would start living inside the portal, and then as a result start creating more and more portals, which in itself is a simulation, right? I don't know. I get tangled up.
I think no, I like what you're saying, but I think it sort of again depends on what is consciousness.
Yeah.
Because if we again consider that I is not the fucking body, then, and if you can ever reach that
nirvana,
if you can ever reach that point that we can sort of understand and maybe even control it in a sense, then it doesn't matter if there's a body, if there's one being, if there's just the singularity of beings. So I think that's what we'll have to do.
Yeah.
To sort of
time to ask the Babas on Himalayas.
देखा आत्मा ही होती है सब कुछ.
but okay, I mean, sorry, was there someone else wanted to add in?
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, Atma also, it's another one of those words which everyone uses without understanding. If you read Gita, it's very different than what people really usually say. Yeah, go on.
But I don't know, maybe I just threw a curveball in there for you guys. like I've been doing throughout the conversation. Like for example, do you think that through our advancements in science and these and the things we're doing in the world, if there ever comes a point where we become immortal, so for example there's no way we can die, and if for example we need to take a pill or something for
भाई, I
like
literally was thinking the same thing कल रात को. मैं पता क्या सोच रहा था? मैं पता क्या सोच रहा था? हाँ?
एक शो है अपलोड करके on Amazon Prime.
Oh, so you can upload your consciousness. Is that what's it about?
Yeah. So what happens is when you die, there's this scene where the person is dying and he's on a stretcher, and then there are two rooms. One says the ER, the normal conventional way of medically treating the person.
I've seen the trailer.
Second one says upload. So he sits on the chair and his consciousness gets uploaded, and then it's like a whole simulation where he's living and he has to pay for the snacks, like $2 from your account, $2 from your if you want to change your clothes, you need to pay $2 through your PayPal and everything. So and then there's this whole subscription plan, and if your family like unsubscribes the subscription plan, you get a 2 GB data in the whole month, where you can only walk, where you can only eat, where you can only drink,
Okay.
and it's fucking amazing. Like
Yeah,
it really blows your mind.
I was thinking कि मतलब जब हमें पता है कि हम मरने वाले हैं तो क्या ना क्यों ना मतलब मरने के टाइम पे हम अपने सारे ऑर्गन्स वगैरह ट्रांसप्लांट करवा लें किसी और के, माइंड ट्रांसप्लांट करवा लें, सब ट्रांसप्लांट करा लें, एंड वी वुड बी फकिंग इमॉर्टल.
If that
Let's
is
kill
a
that bitch.
possibility.
Let's kill that young bitch. I यार मैं ना पता है that's I constantly apologize to even Siddhant and Nonu. I used to जब हम साथ में podcast कर रहे थे, like I make everything boring and philosophical. But I think again it's just the same thing. I think first of all I'm more inclined on the side of just sages and philosophers, like what they say about the ultimate truth, you know, because as we are learning more about science, we are a lot of us basically are understanding, oh, that might have been what they meant. So like we know about atoms now, but there have been Greek philosophers and there have been Indian philosophers who were talking about atoms in a different sense, in different words, obviously. But that's why sort of incline more towards philosophers until science tells us otherwise.
Yep.
Entertainment, and I'm it's not a scientific or whatever. But I think that's what we get wrong, is like I have my consciousness and you have your consciousness. I think that's not the case. Again, because of reading philosophers and everything, I think there's a singularity of consciousness which have us. Again, it's almost like the Jung's quote about the ideas, but consciousness might have us. Consciousness might have illusions which are us, and consciousness is singularity. So I lean more towards that. And again, I apologize for.
No, it's fascinating though, man. Like this is something I think about. But again, with the simulation argument or this argument of immortality, how I think about it is that if we get to know that we become immortal, maybe that takes away the meaning in our life. Because the reason why we strive towards becoming better, to do anything really, is because we know there's an end line, right? So we know that, okay, so there's going to come a point where obviously, like, being for me, as I see it, is going to elapse. So I must strive to do better today, because otherwise, like, I could have this podcast 500 years later because like I can, or something.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
If that makes sense. So that's how I think about it, but I don't know.
Exactly. I was gonna say the same thing, and जब मैंने कहा था ना कि sorry for making it philosophical and I didn't make it that philosophical, वो मैंने disclaimer इसलिए दिया था because I was gonna almost quote Gita, and in that he says like we are all immortals basically, because he's referring to consciousness itself, and that's how we actually are. But yeah, I think what, I'm gonna shut up, you guys continue.
This whole argument can be linked with the procrastination thing, Nilesh, which you talked about. Like, if you give me a task that I need to cut your garden's grass, and you give me 1 year for it, I'll probably do it on the 364th day. I'll not. I'll think that I have 1 year. I have 1 year. I have 1 year. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. So yeah, this can be linked with the procrastination.
इसलिए I love this line so much. I don't know, तूने Marvel movies देखते हैं शान?
नहीं यार, इतना बड़ा फैन नहीं हूँ मैं. I'm like a outcast.
I'm not that big of a fan, but
you're not socially acceptable now.
I'm not socially acceptable.
But उसमें ना, so there's this the evil guy Thanos, and there's this main hero Iron Man, right? And जब Iron Man जाता है Thanos के पास, Thanos उसका असली नाम बोलता है Tony Stark, and Tony's like, you think you know me? And Thanos says, okay, you're not the only one cursed with the knowledge. And I like that line so much because everyone is like, all the humankind or everyone like human is cursed with the knowledge of our own death, inevitability of our own death. And that is the biggest curse in some sense we have. And that's what makes us try to find meaning in our lives.
I think that's so many philosophers, many historians say that that's what separates us from the other sentient animals. So they say that. So I think Yuval Noah Harari has this whole thing that and I think you mentioned Sam Harris when he said that, is because when we almost got to contemplate our own mortality, is when we almost started to, let's say, rule the world in that sense, because then we could sort of negotiate with time, which no one can do. Like no other animal on this planet can do that, right? Like I think the example that Yuval Noah Harari says, and I think a few others have as well. So for example, if you're like a hunter gatherer and you see a big mammoth or something like that, and you kill it, okay, you kill it through a spear or something somehow. Now obviously for you as an individual, it's going to be beneficial if you eat the whole mammoth to yourself, right? Like because that will ensure that your offspring goes on further. But we then discovered that there is only so much time that you can exist, and there are so many other, and the only reason where there's going to be a higher probability that you exist for longer periods of time is if you have other, let's say, people around you who live coexisting with you. So the better thing to do is, if you kill the mammoth, is to share it with your community, because you know then that somehow has given you an advantage in itself. Because, and maybe this is not the right way of phrasing it, but it is how it's conceptualized. So if someone else then kills a mammoth or kills something else, he will then share it within the community, which in itself furthers the community and helps the human offspring prosper.
And it's also the more practical thing to do, because if you kill an animal, a big animal, you cannot eat it all right now.
Yeah.
And then you leave it some for, I think I'm just basically continuing.
Maybe I might.
Your point. And then you
Deepanshu will just eat it for himself. I got a body weight competition, man. Fuck you guys.
So yeah, if you leave it for later use, and then you eat that, and then you leave it again, then tum dekho कि ये तो सड़ गया. Then you're like, it's also the practical thing to do कि खाया बात के लिए बचाया और बाकी का दे दिया. Because then they will also owe us a favor. And that basically got us where we are, in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. That got us to us talking philosophy and thinking that there's meaning to this world.
Yeah.
It's because you don't have to care about the food on our plate, man. It's already taken care of. That's why we can think about it. There's meaning to this life. Yeah, that's so funny.
Dude, अच्छा, by the way, while you are editing this podcast, मैं sort of a disclaimer, क्योंकि ना कई बार you'll see me doing this or that. That's, I'm not annoyed with any of you guys. It's just that my neck is really fucked up. So most of the podcast I'm sitting like this. Like,
but like that's fine, because the manner in which I think I'm going to be uploading it's going to be, so I have the speaker view on. So anyway, it's going to focus in on the person who's speaking. So for example, if you aren't even listening to me, it's fine.
I wanted to ask you, how do you, does the speaker view highlight you?
Yeah.
In your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't.
No.
No,
sorry. When I'm speaking to you right now, then it doesn't. But like obviously when I get the recording back, then it shows me. So when I'm speaking, it has my full screen on.
All right. So it basically records screens separately.
Yeah. Right now, if I'm having the conversation, even though I'm speaking, I'm not the highlight.
Okay.
The last person who
Zoom
spoke
is doing
the highlight.
So Zoom is doing like most of the editing for you, like
exactly.
highlighting.
Yeah.
And you have to put yourself in where you are speaking.
No, it's already done for me pretty much. Otherwise, like when I'm in my studio, I have
you as well in the edit. We can actually talk about technical details later on. I don't know if your reviewers are put me into that.
See, you know a lot more about this stuff anyhow, but like I just leave it on what's it called, speaker view, and then I hit record, and does pretty much the whole thing for me.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll try that next time.
Yeah. But see, this is the first time I'm having multiple people on, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is going to work out. But every time I've had just one person on, that it works out pretty well.
Okay, so in the final edit, it automatically highlights you when you're speaking.
Yeah.
All right. Because जब view होता है ना तब वो highlight नहीं करता.
नहीं करता हाँ.
उसको host को. Like
हाँ.
if I'm the क्या कहते हैं using the highlight view, so it wouldn't highlight me while I'm in the recording. So I thought
when you are
recording
speaking.
maybe now. So
Speaker.
but yeah, we should have done more research before starting the podcast.
No, it's fine, man. Like, I mean, something I guess we haven't spoken about in the conversation while I've been recording the conversation is about this aspect of podcasting in itself. So initially my first question to you guys was, what is a podcast? But like, where do you see the industry going though? Like, how do you see people taking to podcasts in India? Like, what are the backgrounds in which people listen to podcasts? Like, yeah, what are your general thoughts on the evolution that probably podcasting will take in India? Because it's still a baby, I would say.
So again, sorry, if you guys have something to say, you guys should probably say it.
No, go
Uh,
on, go on.
I think it's similar to what Elon Musk was talking about. When he's like, we are already part androids or whatever he said. क्योंकि हम अपने फोन से इतने ज्यादा
फोन
connected
से,
हैं. The
हाँ.
only problem is कि there's a big lag in
Bandwidth
the
जितना
transfer of
नहीं है.
Yeah.
data. So I think compared to video, if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, the lag is थोड़ा सा कम. And again, not as in the time lag, the efforts you have to put in. Because if you're watching a video, you have to look at it, you have to do this. But if your phone is in your pocket and you're listening to the podcast, you're not putting efforts, and you're easily getting the ideas in your brain from the host or from the podcasters. So I can see podcasts going somewhere there, like communication of ideas being quicker, like in the ultimate future, if you're talking about that, which you probably weren't. um, but yes, yeah, I don't think podcast will ever be the biggest market, but I think it will be a big meaningful market in its
But
own.
do you guys think that people who start podcast start with the same concept that we did, like we'll put out unfiltered conversations, the raw conversations, and then when they get a certain level of fame, a certain level of monetary benefit from the podcast, they just start teaching people? So a lot of podcasts that I see in India, who are on the top, I'll not name them, but yeah, they are like, do this, do that. F- Rather than a podcast, it's a therapy session, I'll say, or a lecture. It is a lecture to me, like, do this, do that. I'm just here for the conversation. I don't want to take anything from it. Like, I'll probably take something from it, but I don't want to really be in that student wala thing.
Right.
You need to teach me. So do you guys think that this happens with you as well? Like, if you look at a podcast or something, that you get a feeling of being taught?
See, Siddhant, like if I may answer it, I feel like I really enjoy conversations, and like the names I've been throwing to you guys, I think you guys are similar in that sense. It's actually, as you said, raw, unfiltered conversations where people are actually engaging ideas and they don't really have an agenda in mind as to what they want to achieve in the conversation. But the thing is, with more and more of these of these podcasts that I do see that are getting into a market, and see, like I don't know, like as that's what my first question was, what is a podcast? Because there are so many history podcasters. I don't know if you know the history podcasters, which I enjoy. So there are like Dan Carlin and those sorts of people who have really long these podcasts. But there are solo podcasts where you could call it a lecture, but it's almost, but I like it, but like because but he's almost, because that's just another way of me getting information. Some people have like 15-minute podcast, 20-minute podcast, where they have like short bursts of information that they throw out. So I don't know like what to say to that, because and some people enjoy that sort of content. That's why I don't know like how to wrap my head around it, because I enjoy every sort of thing, but my thing is this, like I like conversational.
For me, Joe Siddhant was talking about, being like the master of everything on the podcast. Like some, and I think it's good. Like, for example, Jordan Peterson is no different. He's also trying to teach you something. But the thing is, I already know about him, from the very basics. And by the basics, I don't mean मुझे पता हो कहाँ से पला पड़ा था and all that. But I was very aware of him. Yeah, I read his book. And uske baad I'm like, okay, I respect this guy, and then I'm looking for new knowledge when I'm looking at him. But agar randomly if someone pops into my feed and I just open the video, and the first 5 seconds of the video is like, you should be doing that, you're not doing that, you should be doing that, then I'm kind of turned off by it. Like, dude, calm the fuck down. We just met. It's the first date.
We just met. Stop teaching me everything.
Yeah, so I'm sort of I don't know why that is. It might be some sort of insecurity, I don't know, but I'm a little turned off when you're like, the first time I'm watching someone and they're like, you're doing this wrong, you should be doing that, you don't know me, yeah, don't pretend like you do. So anyways,
exactly,
that's what I think.
And I think जो ये podcasting के trend की बात हो रही है ना, तो I think थोड़ा switch भी आ रहा है. जैसे I've noticed कि in gyms जैसे treadmills पे चल रहे होंगे बंदे, तो they're listening to podcasts and all.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if it's weird or not. मतलब एक
people used to, sorry, continue.
मतलब मेरा एक फ्रेंड भी है, वो भी कह रहा था कि मैं जैसे कहीं ट्रैवल वगैरह भी कर रहा होता हूँ ना, तो गाड़ी में मेरे पॉडकास्ट ही चल रहे होते हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ म्यूजिक. तो आई थिंक there's this switch coming.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. I think there's थोड़ा सा वो okay, how do I put this? I'm sort of talking about audiobooks,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
relation to podcast. And I love audiobooks. Okay, I love reading. I love listening to them. I don't like them when it comes to anything deep, because things just pass by me, and it might be a very particular thing just for me, but just things just pass by. One sentence just passed
And
by.
you aren't able to focus in.
Yeah. Maybe for a second I was just there, and I'm not saying for a second that कि मैं हर book ऐसे word to word read करता हूँ and I remember all the fucking words. I don't. But still, for me, if there's anything any deep topic, then I'm better off with the क्या कहते हैं, the physical book. And that happened to me when I was listening to Modern Man in Search of a Soul, and I was like, fuck that. Let's order the
Read the
physical
book,
copy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, again, it's
Yeah,
easier to
maybe-
listen to the audiobook.
Maybe to speak to that, audiobooks less. Like I love consuming books, so I have set out like time every day to read. But like in terms of consumption, audio wise or video wise, it's podcasts generally for me. Like even when I'm working out or something, it's podcasts. Maybe to speak to that, it's probably because when you are listening to an audiobook or a podcast, even in a video, in an audio format rather, you're doing something, right?
Yeah.
Like at least how I do it. Like if I'm walking, if I'm working out, if I'm doing something around the house, then I have something on. Like if it's no audio format. So even though you're listening to it, you really aren't. If that makes sense, because you aren't. As you said, some things go and some things don't.
And,
Right.
and I think with reading, you can like grasp more information
Yeah.
faster, right?
Yeah. Because you're in my opinion, yes, but it's also focusing on that one thing, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Plus you
And-
take your
and
time
it's
to
also-
reflect on that sentence.
Sorry, Siddhant, what's nani?
मैं ये कह रहा था, you take your time to reflect on that one sentence if you read a book. Like if you're going through an audio book, you just get lost in thought, and then the audio book starts rolling out.
और एक वो भी है ना कि लाइक पॉडकास्ट वगैरह में वो बंदा एक सेंटेंस जब तक बोलेगा तब तक हम बुक्स में वो 3 सेंटेंसेस पढ़ सकते हैं.
Yeah,
Yeah,
audio is
exactly.
also much slow in that sense as a
Slower,
form of
yeah.
consumption.
If you're
Yeah.
if you're really trying to read like you said, Ishan.
Hmm.
I think there's this book, Hyper Focus. I don't know if you've read it.
No, yeah.
Charles Bailey, I think his name is. Good
Okay.
book.
Okay.
Usme he's talking about attentional space, and I think it's attentional space is more of the term he gave it. I don't remember the exact scientific name, but basically it's a very simple concept. It's like this is everything you can focus on.
Mhm.
And जब भी तुम अलग अलग काम कर रहे हो ना, तो वो अलग अलग जगह घेर रहा है उसमें attentional space में. Make sense?
Right.
So he goes on to sort of explain how just walking takes a lot of your attention space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how much you can focus on a deep book while you're walking? You cannot put your full focus in it. And if you're reading a deep book, I think you should probably just
Read it. Yeah.
I guess temporal memory capacity was a term. I'm not sure. So don't call me a dick for that.
No, but Nilesh, just to speak to that, I totally agree with it. Like there's so many studies that have been done into say that people say multitasking is good and all that. Like I don't agree with that. See, because I feel that as you said, I think it's almost becomes like a 60-40 split almost, because you have to be focusing on the other thing. Even if you think it's so simple as walking or something, you still need to walk. Like
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing, as you were saying is, but how I look at it, and this is something obviously the Bhagavad Gita talks about, that if you're doing something, just do that thing. Like if you're taking a shower, just take a shower. Don't listen to music or something. Because
Simple as that.
Yeah, but there is something to that though. There's something very profound in that. Like if I want to share an example of myself, even like each time when I used to have a meal every day, my breakfast, my dinner, whatever, I used to always have like a YouTube video on or a podcast on while I was eating my food. And what I noticed was that I didn't even sometimes know what I was eating. Like that's how bad the situation got, because I wasn't focused on my food. And I said, I have to stop this. So I just stopped. I just focused on my food, whatever the food was. I just felt more in touch with my food. Like I knew, let's say, the ingredients, even the person who made it, and like a finer connect to that. Don't want to sound preachy, but like, yeah, I think there is something to that though.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, I almost said it in a joking manner, but it's much easier said than done.
Yeah.
When you're taking a shower, just to take a shower.
Yeah.
And end of the day, if you just look at it at that act of taking a shower and just taking a shower, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
If you're just starting out, definitely,
Because you're thinking
without years
doing
of
something.
practice, you cannot do that. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what again, a lot of people meditate for. And I even like kya kehte hain, you watch Sandeep Maheshwari? I used to. I don't.
I have
do
seen a
lot
couple of his
anymore.
videos, but not intensively. No.
But yeah, exactly. So in one of him, he was one of the videos he was talking about spirituality, and that's what he was talking about, awareness. You should be aware with everything you're doing. And I don't remember the name of the video, otherwise I would have said it. But he's like, when you're just going through the steps, go through the steps. And it's not कि यार मैं अपने आप को stress में नहीं डाल रहा कुछ और सोच के. You're practicing your awareness, your focus. All the time you can do that. इसलिए people say वो 32 times चबाना चाहिए. People talk about the health benefit. There's also focus benefits of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you said about multitasking is not really our thing. And that is true, but uske, again, I think it comes from the book वही hyper focus जिसकी मैं बात कर रहा था. It's like novelty bias, I think is what he called it, or it might be the official term, I don't know. But it's like since the beginning we are sort of we evolved like this, because अगर हम कोई आंख जला के बैठे हैं, चार लोग ऐसे हाथ से गिरा और वही क्या चल रहा है. So we in the ancient times we have to look around, because पीछे से any animal can come and fuck you up in a second. So that's why it's
that is always ingrained in us.
Yeah, exactly. So we like doing new things. So when you're just switching the task, it feels good. And in fact,
but it's mentally draining as well, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, the same thing I was watching I don't remember, David Mamet, the writer, great fucking writer, and he was talking about if you write a play, he said you can start a stopwatch and see this. You write a play and don't start the play, people will come and say don't start it. 7 minutes later, people will start to look around. Do something, then 7 minutes later, again people will start to look around. So it's like 7-minute times stamp. And if we again, because I saw that, I directly connected it to all the TV shows, because 7 minutes later you go for a break. Then 21 minutes later, if you see most of the shows, they're like 21 minutes. अगर Netflix वगैरह पे हम जाके देखे, पहले TV पे तो आधा घंटा लगता था मैं. But so they are basically playing with your focus there, and nice thing, I guess.
No, but just for an example, just look at the four of us right now. We've been having a conversation for 2.5 hours right now, which has been very deep. Like, we've touched upon some great topics. We've been focusing on a lot. That's not something you see in like a general populace. Like, how often would you anyone, like, for that matter, with your friends even, or someone for that matter, like, how often would you have conversations like these where you would just ask the person, even if you're going on a dinner date or something like that, who's sitting with you, to just talk and have a conversation of that sort, where you're only focusing on that other individual as well, aren't looking at your phone, aren't focusing on something else, aren't looking at the news, nothing else, but just the conversation you're having. That's in itself is dying out.
That's a scary thing, because we might need podcasts to have real conversations in the future. That's scary.
Like, the approach I've started to take is that with my friends as well. Like, if they send me messages and stuff, I'm like, dude, let's just hop on a video call or something like that. Like, if I really want to speak to someone, because I know that even though it's taking some time from me, like, that's still beneficial, because I'm building relationships. But it's better, because even though it's taking some more time than, let's say, just dropping some messages now and then, I'm more fulfilled because of the COVID. Obviously, I'd be meeting them in person otherwise, but because of COVID, I'm more fulfilled just having a conversation with them through an audio call or through a video call. Yeah.
The art of the conversation is being lost, definitely.
Yeah.
Again, I say these things and it seems like I'm sort of making fun of it. I'm
no,
really
but it's
not.
true. It's true.
Yeah, it's very true. We don't communicate. How many relationships you see people who basically say, and again, I talk about relationships a lot because it's a very simple way of looking at what's going on with people. But how many relationships you see people who are like, oh no, I really love this person, and well,
and
time you're giving
and the like excuse to like avoid these conversations is like, be practical, man.
Well, I think that's also the speciality of introverts. They can talk like this, I think, which is a good thing.
See, but something I learned, and this was from one of the most prominent podcasters in India, I'd say. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. His name is Amit Verma. He does the Seen and the Unseen podcast. Fascinating podcast. I'd recommend it to anyone. Like, I think one of the most deepest conversations he has in the podcast space. So and I think I took it away from him really. He said that the art of the conversation is, for example, if you're speaking to Deepanshu or whoever, I'm simply listening to you, only listening to you, not thinking about what I want to say next. Okay. If that makes sense. Because what often happens is that when you're speaking something, I'm not entirely listening to you, because I'm thinking that, oh, if I make this book reference, then maybe he'll think I'm smart or something. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
more about myself rather than actually thinking about what you're saying, right? And that just happens so many times, and that's where the misunderstandings happen, because
Yeah.
people don't understand what they mean.
It's the insecurities we all have. Like,
This
uh,
like this was literally this
I
was
need to
happening.
sound smart.
Like
Yeah.
literally this was happening to me in this podcast as well. Like earlier. Yeah.
see, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of people won't accept that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
again, I'm not rubbing his back. Okay, let me. I don't know how to put this now. मतलब आ जाता दिमाग में फिर निकल जाता. See, that's how dumb I am. But basically the same thing. I don't remember the name. मुझे ये पता मैंने कहाँ सुना था. Charlie Kaufman की there's a great speech. Charlie Kaufman is a writer, one of the best writers right now, of this generation, maybe of all time. उसकी speech थी BAFTA is award system. तो उस पे like 30-40 minutes. Go ahead, check it out if you're gonna love it, even though he's a writer and you're not into that, but you're gonna love it. So usme he's like, if we don't talk, we display facts and figures to people.
Hmm.
And that quote was written in 1940s.
Hmm.
It's not a new thing, but it seems like ये अभी बात हुई होगी. Same dialogue in Fight Club, which is basically one of my favorite movies of all time. And उसमें अच्छा, by the way, Bollywood वाली नहीं, रितेश देशमुख वाली नहीं,
Brad Pitt वाली.
ये बॉलीवुड की भी है.
हाँ.
I don't know this.
No, Fight Club. It is something like that. But हाँ, तो उसमें there's this narrator, Edward Norton and Helena Bonham Carter. So they are hugging. And he's like, it's really good, something like that. It's really good when people think you're dying because they're listening to you instead of, and she continues, instead of, thinking of what they're going to say next.
Right.
And it is so, the writing is so brilliant because they are agreeing to it. She's doing the same thing as they're agreeing to it. That's, brilliant writing right there. But yeah, it's an old concept, but still it's hard to grasp. I guess, and that's something I constantly work on. जब मैं सुन रहा हूँ ना, and कभी भी I catch myself, stop, what you listen to them, and it happens more often than I would like to accept.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But do you think social medias and everything? I'm sorry. Ishant,
No, sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Do you think these new features like reacting to a message, do you think this is also taking away the actual gist of the conversation? Like I write a message to someone, he just reacts or double taps it. Do you think that this is also taking away?
तू ही करता है ये.
My way of ending a conversation.
यहाँ मत रोक. हर जगह बेइज्जती करवाते हैं. जाना तो
साल imposter.
नहीं, I am not a texter. Like I just call up someone. अगर मेरे को even छोटी सी slightest of the बात मेरे को नीलेश से करनी है, नोनी से करनी है, I just call them up. I don't text कि चलो ये करते, चलो वो करते. I just call them up anytime. So yeah, I think that social media is also taking away the whole conversation part from the texts by introducing these things.
The worst thing of that is like it's very hard to have difficult conversations because that's why they're difficult conversations. But it is relatively easier to have those conversations on texts.
Yeah.
So again, I'm an extreme introvert and very high in agreeableness. So I've worked for a lot of people without being paid, and it's fine, But when I first, asked for like, okay, man, can you start paying me? And so I couldn't do that on the phone. That's how bad it was. So I did it on the text, and I got a very good response because he was my friend, and he was like, dude, we can talk business openly. Why do you worry about it so much? And because I'm, as I said, insecure, introvert, and agreeable, if I had gotten a very bad response, I don't know what that would have done to me at the time.
Yeah.
I was very young. So again, I appreciate that friend a lot. And but yeah, because of text, difficult conversations, it's getting easier, which is not good because you should take the responsibility of the difficult conversation by doing it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's killing conversation though? Because, and I've heard this and I've seen this, like, I'm not going to even speak about other people. I've sometimes seen this for myself, really. Like, sometimes if someone just calls me out of the blue, sometimes like, oh, there's a call. Like, generally, I'm expecting like a message or something, right? Like, and I've seen this for myself, so I'm not even going to speak for someone else, right? But like, do you think, and maybe it's more with this generation because like my mom's pretty confident in calling people, and like that's I've seen with my relatives, like, because maybe that was the culture back then, like people used to call people, so that's fine. But like, do you feel like with the newer generation, like that stuff just getting killed almost, and people aren't even sorry, just from this point,
go on.
People aren't even, let's say, talking to the other person as such, but talking to their avatars. because
Yeah.
let's say how I may be on Instagram, however much I want to portray myself as I am genuine, there are still, let's say, these things that subconsciously that come in place, right? Like even if you aren't aware of it, you appropriate yourself on these things in a manner that isn't genuine, right? So they're talking to these avatars and then making appropriations on the things that they're saying through these avatars. So that in itself wouldn't be the complete picture. So that's my sort of understand. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, it's a difficult question. Again, it's one of those things which I have to think about. And I guess instead of answering your question, I can sort of add to your question a bit.
Yeah.
Because so recently again I was so I just saw a couple of posts, right? So this girl on my Instagram, and she just uploaded a couple of posts, and I was like, it almost struck me at the time, and I sort of texted her, "Hey, that's not what's going on there," and she's like, well, "Nice, it's kind of mediocre posts." And I think, well, look, I wasn't really hitting on her, so what happened there? But then I sort of understood what happened there, and I told her as best as I could at the time. It's like my Instagram is so much filled with people shamelessly plugging and selling shit, including mine.
Yeah.
It's a little fresh, at least, to see someone using social media just like, hey, here I am.
Yeah.
A very normal, natural post. So again, as I don't think I answered your question or at all, but
No.
I think that is what's happening.
Right.
People are selling shit all over social media, I feel.
Mm.
Like my social media is also like, you want to buy this, you want to buy that, my course is out, my podcast is out, just please support my small business and everything. Social media is a big India Mart, I'll say. They're just constantly selling you things.
Yeah.
I think if Nonu has Nonu, तू कह रहा था कुछ?
नहीं मैं कुछ सोच रहा था.
but वही
I think Deepanshu is the wisest of us all. Like
No.
He is, because he knows how to listen. Like me. But I think मैंने थोड़ा सा ना ईशान के क्वेश्चन से यू टर्न ले लिया सॉर्ट ऑफ.
नहीं,
I just मैं इसलिए बोलना चाह रहा था कि at least we can get back to the main question, because I don't want to do that the entire podcast. कोई सुने कि क्या बात कर रहे हो, ये कुछ और कर रहे हो, कुछ और कर रहे हो. But now that I do think I agree with it, but again it's like half thought out. So I cannot really say that completely I agree with that, because end of the day there's also the element that you are just keeping it touch easily to someone. So I think that's also like sort of the benefits and kind of important.
Of course, yeah.
But yes, I'm not sure how new this problem is of not having real conversations, because as I said, that quote was from 1940s.
Yeah.
It's easy for us to blame the internet for these new things, but I'm not sure if that is the truth.
What else do you think it could be?
I think again, even though like I was saying before, people just understand like this is my life, and they just habitually they just keep doing the same things. It's sort of a loop that they create for themselves.
It's
and
a positive feedback loop almost. Yeah,
and they get stuck in there, and whenever someone challenges those ideas, it's really taxing work. So I think that might be one of the reasons why people don't like deep conversations or long conversations. And obviously there is a time element, and we all have limited amount of time. And if I get a random guy off of the street and be like, let's just talk for 2 days, he'll tell me, dude, fuck off, I have a job, I have my family.
Not everyone's a philosopher.
Yes, and, in the urgent sense, that is right. That is more important to feed his family.
Yeah.
So I think there's the time element to it, and there's also the sort of, I don't want to use the word laziness. Instead, I want to say it's extremely hard to do. Not saying ke, oh, dekho main kar raha hu, it's I'm doing a hard thing. I'm not saying that. But yeah, to have a real conversation is not easy.
And I think text and like on audio या फिर कॉल पे भी जो ये रियल कॉन्वर्सेशंस है ना, ये करनी इट्स वेरी हार्ड, बिकॉज कॉन्वर्सेशन में जो मेजर एलिमेंट वो क्या होता है, जो आप बता भी रहे थे शायद नीलेश भैया, परसेंटेज की बॉडी लैंग्वेज का कुछ परसेंटेज होता है.
I need to add it something. No, complete your thing.
हाँ, and like जो हम बोल रहे हैं that holds very least percentage among all that. So I think text और audio पे भी it's very hard to have real conversations and deep conversations, because
And
you
before
cannot
Siddhant-
connect to that person.
अच्छा सॉरी मैंने नोनू को 2-3 बार इंटरप्ट कर दिया.
So what do you think, like?
Before Siddhant, like मैं एक बार बस कोई चीज में should add up to it. तो
हाँ.
Chris Voss की book में, और I guess somewhere he talks about it, जो नोनू कह रहा था, it's
हाँ.
like 7% of communication is the words we are saying. 38% is the
Things
our
in your head.
tonality.
Oh,
Our
okay,
tonality,
okay.
the
Alright.
vocals, and the rest I think is 55%, but might not be the case. Is your body language.
Body language.
So 7% of the communication is basically the things you're saying, and when you're on texts, that's all you got. 7%.
Yeah.
So that's a very nice link Nono made about the thing. But sorry, Siddhant, you had something to say.
Also, the conversation killer that we were talking about, I'll also say the relationship killer. So some of my relationships with my friends from college is just they send me a meme, I react to it. I send them a meme, they react to it. And I don't know where this relationship is going, and I don't want to keep that relationship.
No strings attached.
You get what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to keep that relationship, but they just once in a blue moon they just send me a meme, I just react to it, and there's
Double
no
click.
conversation going on. Yeah, there's just no conversation going on.
It's like saying, "Hey, I'm still alive. Hey, so am I."
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, it's just that conversation, and then once in a blue moon they'll hit me up like, "What's up? Nothing much, bro. What's up with you? Nothing much." Just the
Okay.
conversation.
But पता है, it's almost like the ritual. जैसे ईशान भी कह रहा था ना कि it's like अचानक से call आ रही थी, like, oh, call
Yeah.
again. Calling me now. Okay, he didn't say it like that.
It's
But
a defense mechanism that
I think
that just comes out.
हमने ritual भी तो बना रखा है ना.
हाँ.
Out of the blue, what up, bro?
Yeah.
पता है उसका क्या हुआ? अरे रुक, I'll call you. Do you have time? So we also have sort of created this ritual around calling.
Yeah.
जैसे call करना is invading someone's privacy. I don't think that's what it is. But मुझे भी, if अगर मैं 2 साल पहले कोई friend था, I would feel weird calling. There are some people who are like, who'll just call me and be like, अरे यार मेरा ये काम करते हैं 2 साल बाद भी, and I don't think that's the best thing either.
So I don't know if I've so on that, when you talk about, but isn't that with everything? Like, so Nilesh was talking a little bit earlier about the divorce culture, like in which is starting to propel in the West for that matter. But isn't that with everything? Like right now, like with things like dating apps and porn and those sorts of things, it's made it much easier for individuals, let's say, to, I don't know, not take responsibility, if that's the word. I think that is the word. So even if, let's say, they're seeing someone, they wouldn't want to commit to a long-term relationship because, like, maybe I'm missing out, like maybe there's someone better or something like that. And yes, that might be the case, but then you don't invest the time in the particular individual you're with, if that makes sense. And that's with everything. That's with and with even when you're with friends on a like if you're going for a movie or if you're out for a meal or something, sometimes the friends would be thinking, oh, but what about the match that's there on today? Like, what's going to happen there? Or like, what about like that friend or this, that? So you're always concerned about the whole world. And that's just the way social media is. It almost makes you focus about what's happening everywhere else in the world, which is good to some extent, but also has its negatives as well. Yeah. Because we're always jacked with information, like, oh, look what's happening, this, that, this, that, this, that. Like, yeah, I know, but what can I do?
Wait, initially, like you were talking about in the commitment thing, it's, and see, there's deep things we can talk about, like not me, but you guys probably, that why this is not right, or at least that's what I think. And there are probably deep psychological and practical reasons why this is not right, or not taking the responsibility isn't nice. But I think if you just look at it very simply, like I think this might be the simplest way to put it. You're not taking responsibility because not taking it is easier than taking it, right?
Exactly.
And as long as you just keep doing the easy things, you're just becoming softer. And by softer, again, I mean, वही वाली बात है ना, because who you are today might not be enough for the challenges you'll face tomorrow. Right. So if you just keep doing the easy thing, you're being worse than who you are today tomorrow, because and the challenges might be increasing. So simple as that, I think. And someone might listen to it and maybe you guys do think, how is that fucking related to relationships? But I think it is.
It's related to everything though, like I think so.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking responsibility in anything, basically. Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
So something I wanted to add to that was like, because I'm reading Gandhi right now, so he talks about like no job is too less for your moral standing, if that makes sense, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, and this is the same thing when people talk about cleaning your room, be it Jordan Peterson or any of the other military people as well who say that, is because you think that this job is small for you and doesn't make sense. Why should you be doing it? But it actually does, because it then tells you that you have to start somewhere, right? And if you get those things done, only then will you be able to, let's say, take more burden upon yourselves. So like, I don't know, maybe so with the relationship stuff, like, I don't know, like maybe only when you start giving more attention, start paying more attention to the person you're with, only then will you be able to, let's say, then enjoy that relationship. Otherwise you'll just be in that constant loop, right? Like, I
Yeah.
can do better, or like the other person thinking I can do better. I don't know.
The funniest thing is, from have you seen the show The Office?
Yeah.
उसमें Jim and Pam starts dating and Dwight is like, I don't think it's right. They both can do better. I don't know.
He thinks so.
I think they both can do better. Like, what do you mean? But again, on a serious note, it's more like live-in relationships a lot of the times don't end up working out, and the one of the reasons for that might be, and again, it's probably from Peterson, but one of the reasons for that might be like, you're trying to make a relationship work, which is one of the like biggest relationships that you can make, and you're seeing whether it will work out or not, or whether I can do better or not. Maybe to make the relationships that like work, which is again the highest level of relationship, it requires the sort of commitment to make it work. So you're basically trying to do it the other way around. Before the commitment, you're seeing if it works or not. Maybe the commitment is what is required to make it work. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know.
No, it
I think
does. It does.
Yeah, I think the live-in relationship come with a disclaimer like, I'm trying you out.
Yeah.
Like you are my trial product. I'll try you out. I'll say that this shit doesn't work, and then I'll fuck off.
But that is something I can learn from. Like, I have that issue, and again, it's not usually something I hide. Like, I think Siddhant and Nonu both know about it, but I have that sort of deep arrogance in me that a lot of the times I'll feel like, that job is not for me. Why am I doing that job? And yes, that is something I should probably work on.
But pata hai, I was also watching this great channel Charisma on Command. So he was also telling ki if you wanna know na if that commitment or that relationship will work, so imagine ki if you're not committed to that partner, would you be still friends with that her or him? That is a great indicator if a relationship will work or not.
Yeah, that has happened in my past where I wouldn't be friends.
So that can be a great indicator. Like,
this is one of the quadrants that we can touch upon, but yeah, there are multiple factors as well to consider in a relationship, obviously.
Well, sorry, if you have
no, I just wanted to say this key. There are multiple factors as well.
Yes, I think ultimately, if you want to know if a relationship will work or not, commit to it and you'll find out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the most obvious
Pretty
and
much
the most practical way.
Something I want to add to this is that something I think a lot about is scarcity. And what I mean by that is, when you have a lot of things at your disposal, you don't value them as much. So, and this is something I've taken away when I've done fasting and those sorts of things, is that a reason? Obviously, there are health benefits to it, but another reason I do it is for the fact that of the mind space it puts me in. Because when I then eat food after a 16-hour fast or 18-hour fast or something, I'm more grateful for the food that exists on my plate, if that makes sense. And I can connect that with everything. So when Siddhant was talking about live-in relationships and those sorts of things, or even dating apps for that matter, or porn or something like that, from my understanding, you should try to keep away from it as much as possible. Because when you do then have that special relationship with that person who you do want to commit with, that will then be more gratifying than if you simply have these as when people say, right, delay gratification for a long-term vision that you have or something like that, which you find meaningful.
And I think that is one major sign of being mature, that you can delay your gratifications, because, and that's how we say, oh, he's just childish, because just a candy feels nice, but it's fasting 15 hours a day, it doesn't feel nice. and just you were saying when you don't have something, that's when you realize the value of it. It's like my neck is fucked up, so that gave me an excuse to cry about it. But that's the thing, I cannot look like on my left more than this without moving my shoulders, and it's like all fucked up over there, and now I'm realizing like how much I use my neck. And
Like when one of your nostrils get blocked, you're like, oh,
Yes.
I'm so grateful for breathing. Yeah.
और पता है क्या, and the thing is कि हम वैसे भी एक ही nostril से breathe करते हैं,
Yeah.
but when the other one gets blocked, you're like, oh my
You're
god.
like, oh.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
How's your intermittent fasting going though?
So now I've stopped it. I've stopped it like a month back because I saw a dietitian and she's like, you don't really need to do it as much. I thought there were health benefits to it, and I think there still are. Like the research still up in the air, but like it's more about like the mind space it puts me in. Like I don't know. I don't want to sound too. I don't even know what's the term here, but like I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel that if I've eaten at 5:36 p.m. like my last meal, and the next meal I have is at 10:30, 11, like the session I get in before that, if I'm doing something, if I'm working on something that's cognitively challenging, I don't know, there's just, I'm able to work at my best at that period of time. And like, I don't know, like Gandhi goes as far as saying that gives you an inclination of making you closer to God. I don't know if I'll go as far as saying that, but I don't know, man, there's something special that happens. Maybe it takes us back to like a hunter-gatherer days, because we've gone 2 days, 3 days without eating food. And when you do get it, then it makes you feel like, yeah.
I think
there
I
are
think
certain health benefits to it. Like I was watching
just
a
but just
podcast.
give me a second though. I'll just like just because I know no is probably gonna give a educated thing about it, and तो मैं पहले वो गवार वाली निकाल देता हूँ side में.
Don't overhype me, bro.
Because
I might fuck
he's
this
studying
up.
nutrition. I know he's studying nutrition,
No
so he
pressure.
can give a better educated about it. But I can this one sentence I want to say is like the way some people are promoting it is wrong, definitely. So you need to understand that they're like तुम intermittent fasting करो फिर कुछ भी खाओ.
Right.
Eating healthy is a good idea either way.
Yeah.
So sorry no to cut you off.
So I was like listening to this podcast where there was a microbiologist or something. So she said ki when you give shock to your body by intermittent fasting, now when you don't eat for a day, so it shocks your body.
Yeah.
So what it does is that कि हमारे gut में ना, you know, there are bacterias which helps in digestion and all. So there are certain good bacterias. So when your body goes into shock na during intermittent fasting, the good microbes and bacteria, they start blooming in your bacteria.
Yeah.
Which helps in your digestion and starts improving your health. So that's what intermittent fasting does.
Yeah, I mean, see, like I just had I had a nutrition coach on my last episode. So he was like, obviously he thinks it only helps you in calorie reduction in terms of, let's say,
yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
And those sorts of things, which I do agree with. He doesn't see it to be that beneficial in the long term. I don't know if I particularly agree with him to that sense, because like the research is still up in the air. Like I don't know, because
if it's not sustainable, it's not beneficial.
Right. Yeah.
And I think again, sort of moving away from nutrition. We can get back to it. I'm sorry, but that's one of those good things about podcast, that you just had that guest on with you.
Yeah.
Right, and you can disagree with him, and it's fine. You can disagree with me, and it's fine.
Yeah.
So again, and we see this more in a podcast than in real life.
For sure.
And that's a big problem, I think.
See, another thing that I've noticed is that often what happens is that as a host as well as a podcaster, what often some people would play, for example, if I have an individual on and he has a certain way of looking at the world, the podcaster or the journalist is supposed to play devil's advocate sometimes, is to give the listeners, the watchers who are tuning in, a perspective that isn't just one-sided. Okay, so that may be difficult for the journalist or the podcaster, who in itself may agree with, let's say, the things the individual is talking about, but it in itself gives you another perspective. But sometimes what I've seen is that they take it almost defensive. Like they become defensive, saying that how can you question like my authority, or like
how
this
can
and
you
that?
break my bubble of thinking in a similar way?
I think it's the same thing. Well, first of all, obviously you have to play the devil's advocate, because there's nothing interesting about two guys saying yes for 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
And But again, the issue is the same. When you think you are your ideas, when you connect with them too much, we think, if he's attacking my ideas, he's attacking me as a person, and we're not trying to do that.
Right. We're just trying to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have to get to the bottom of what the hell is going on.
Exactly, bro. That's
That's what you have to do.
Just gotta keep asking why. So like something, because we're talking about this aspect of conversation and those sorts of things. Like, so this is something I think about a lot. I think this may take some time. Like, I'm not even sure. Like maybe 20 years, something like that. But do you guys think that maybe these sorts of conversations, like podcasting, YouTube, or digital platforms, may overtake traditional media? Let's say, because right now, however much we may disagree with it, the general population of people who consume their news is still through print, and it's still through what's it called, let's say
Mainstream media.
Republic, NDTV and those sorts of things. And that's how most of the people get their news. But do you think that there will come a point where people will move away? And I think it's difficult in India because of the economic situation, that even though internet's very cheap, I don't think people consume as much news on it as they do on TV.
I think I would probably like that. I don't think it's necessarily gonna happen, because again, as we were talking, it's not the easiest thing to watch a podcast, a TV podcast, or anything like that, which challenges your cognition. But I think that's really good, because it's like the same thing what we were talking about before. Like, maybe there might be some ideas we need to ban instead. I believe there are really strong bad ideas. The ideas you believe are bad, that means you just have to make really strong good ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that's something the podcasts will do, and that's what we're trying to do with our defense systems. Every country in the world.
Yeah.
We are not like we don't believe in fighting, so we wouldn't have a defense.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. Probably. How would I know?
No, that is definitely a bad idea. Yeah, man, the YouTube market, something I think about a lot. Like, so obviously we touched upon the aspect of like how much power it has, but even like in the future, I'm optimistic, because I look at the West in that sense, and like Joe Rogan's pretty big. Like,
yeah.
like
He's very big,
Fucking big
he
and
get more.
influential.
He's more influential than the New York Times even.
He's
Yeah.
buff.
Like, imagine
Um,
that. Like, imagine that.
He's just 5'8", वैसे. But because no one said he's buff. But again, Peterson came on to Rogan's podcast, and there was a discussion about how many listeners does he have, and he had about 60 million downloads. And it's like, what the fuck are you saying?
And this
dude?
was like in
And-
2016, 17 or something.
उसके बाद Peterson came on the second time. He's like, you had a lot of listeners. Yeah, now it's probably double that. About 120 million listeners.
See, so that's why I'm optimistic a little bit. See, even though it's in the
Huh.
West, and may take time, a lot of time to come to India, but what's to say I may not be the next Joe Rogan, or you guys may not be the next Joe Rogan. People are
Hopefully,
listening.
but again, like, इस बारे में pessimist इसलिए because throughout the history, philosophers, and I'm not saying any of us are philosophers right now,
No.
because the definition of philosopher is
Surely not.
flimsy. But okay, let's not say philosophers. Let's say people who are talking about deep shit
Yeah.
weren't really the most liked people.
Yeah.
Nietzsche, for example,
Oh yeah, he was poor, man. Like that guy.
he was poor and
Starved.
he had
That
an
guy.
extremely tragic life.
Yeah.
And there are probably a lot of people like that. Jung and Freud were sort of superstars and everything.
Fuck boys. Especially
But
Freud.
that's after Nietzsche. After everyone realized, oh shit, we should have been listening to that guy with the mustache. So, but yeah,
He
I
also
think
took one
that's
for the
our
team.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His life is tragic, and well,
Yeah.
you can say he basically influenced the world wars. In a
Yeah.
sense.
Who knows?
Or predicted them. Either way.
Yeah. Listen, another sort of question I wanted to ask you guys is, because you guys have conversations in Hindi, like, what do you want to speak to that for that market? Because I know I've spoken to other podcasters who have content in Hindi, but not only in Hindi, in other regional languages as well, like Marathi, and Bengali, and other sorts of regional languages. And I've seen not only podcasting, but also these YouTube channels and Instagram pages which promote content in regional languages, and even in Hindi for that matter, who get a lot of traction. So like, what do you have to speak to that? Because I feel that, and maybe I'm speaking to that myself, because I have an English podcast, like an English speaking podcast for the most part, but there is still a market to target there. Like, maybe there aren't intellectual enough people, or maybe I'm not well aware, so I don't know, but maybe there aren't enough content that's being put out in the Hindi platforms, on
Yeah.
the Marathi platforms, or on the regional platforms. Like, what do you guys have to think about that?
I think the language, the Hindi, gave us a more connect to the audience.
Yeah.
Like massive people in India obviously are speaking Hindi,
course,
and they
of
like to
course.
consume the content in Hindi. So yeah, I think that gives them more audience connect to us. But yeah, sometimes it can lower the quality of audience also.
Right.
Like I'm not taking a dig on anyone, but yeah, tier 3, tier 4 people wouldn't really go for an English podcast in India, I'll say.
Yeah.
Most of them.
They'd probably most of them, they'd probably go for a Hindi podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why we are also doing the English podcast, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it gives us more audience reach, I'll say. That's it.
We were basically discussing the same thing, I guess, yesterday or the other day. Big YouTubers, they shifted, from English to Hindi
Hindi,
titles for
yeah.
their videos, and that works.
Yeah.
And
It
good
works
for
very
them.
well, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's hard to conceptualize things in Hindi, and
Right.
again,
Right.
that's not a dig on the language. I think Hindi is much more complex language than English.
Yeah.
It's just that because every time I'm looking and watching most of the
You're consuming more
content
stuff
like
through
this.
English, or you're
It's
more comfortable in
English,
English. Yeah.
Hmm.
and again, I जैसे मैंने बोला ना, मैं बहुत बुरा educated बंदा हूँ. I'm very bad like I'm the least educated person here. So I didn't even used to go to school, and Siddhant knows this because we were in the same school.
Yeah.
To clear things up, we weren't friends in the school. We became friends later. So I had I was absent all the time basically. So I was not even almost, I was literally thrown out of the school at one time. They were like, because your attendance is too less, so either you repeat the class or you get the fuck out. And I was like, all right,
Nilesh
I'll get
in his childhood days was questioning the conventional education system, I'll say. Nilesh was like, fuck it, I don't want to read books.
Ahead of the curve. मैं podcaster
Thank you.
बनेगा.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. But the thing happened. So what I was trying to say is, I learned all the English, I would say, from watching WWE, and because I wanted to be a wrestler once, right? and the movies and everything. So basically, I don't have a traditional
Education in
on
English, yeah.
English or anything. But still, I got to a point where I'm thinking in English, and I'm conceptualizing things in English. So for me, it's easier to do it in English. Hindi में conceptualize कैसे बोलूं, formulate कैसे बोलूं, तो मुझे वो दिक्कत होती है. हाँ, but सोचना is more of thinking,
मेरी भी हिंदी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है.
वही कह रहा हूँ. Hindi is not a bad language. I think it's much more complex than English.
Yeah.
But आने भी चाहिए इतनी अच्छी.
No, but that speaks to something about translations as well, right? Because, and even thinking about it in different languages. So what I've heard from multilingual speakers and multilingual thinkers is that they say that you should always try to learn as many languages as possible, because what that allows you to do, and be proficient in them, because what that allows you to do is that even if you're thinking of a same concept, try thinking that in different languages, and you'll get different interpretations from those, you'll get different interpretations from what you were trying to achieve, which is so bizarre, and it's just so fascinating.
Yeah. That is bizarre. That's all I'll say about it. But this is the first time I've heard of the concept, and I tried to learn French, but then I got COVID and I was isolated and everything. So that didn't go very well. But yeah, and definitely, I think I would definitely try that.
Yeah,
I learned German in
me
my university, but it was just the classroom level German.
Yeah.
So and the teachers weren't that into the subject as well. They were just like, "Acha chalo pass hi hona hai." So I think the education system that we were talking about, I'm taking a dig on it right now, that they don't necessarily teach the language in a way that it should be taught.
Right.
It was just like, okay, learn these vowels, learn these adjectives, learn these sentences. This will come in the exam. Just write it down.
Yeah.
And I genuinely wanted to learn German, but I couldn't because of the teaching facility in India. I'd say.
That's why as I said, see, I don't have a traditional education on English, so my English is not great. I also don't know German or any other language. But the thing is, when I'm reading Nietzsche or Jung, then it's much harder for me to get the grasp of the ideas, because first of all, the traditional English is not that good, and it has already been translated from other languages to English, which already makes it bad.
Yeah.
And for me, that just takes a little extra time or a lot instead.
But that there is something to that though. Like when you sort of decipher texts or translate text into, obviously, like changing the text into something else, there's a lot which is lost. And
Yes.
and I don't want to sound trivial about it, but sometimes like the entire you can't understand the concept because that sometimes words don't exist.
Exactly.
Sometimes words don't exist in another language. Sometimes concepts don't exist. So yeah, it's fascinating.
That's why those writers were so great. Like,
Yeah.
you translate their writings, you make it shit, and no dig on the translators. You can only do so well, and still they're world changing ideas even in translated English. So that's how amazing they were. And I think again, thinking out loud here, it's not something I've done. As I said, I didn't learn any other language, but there's something sort of primitive about it. You're learning how to speak again, and it can take you to a primitive place if you want to go there. I think it sort of happened again. Not primitive might not be the right word. Archaic might not
fundamental
be the right word.
Like the basics.
That might be the word. Yeah.
Like Elon Musk talks about this aspect of thinking from first principles. So he says that he says things like, I don't know, so you want to get a rocket into Mars or something. Like, how do you want to do that? Like, what are the fundamental things? Okay, so we have the fundamental nature of space and time. So that's something we have to work with. But like you guys say that rockets have to be built in this certain way, where they have this dimension, this is the engine, and this is the fuel that they generally require. But why exactly? Like, that's not a definitive science. That's not something that's definitive. So maybe we can question it from the onset. And I think that's what people should be doing.
He talks about the analogy of the trunk of a tree and roots of the tree and a flower.
Right.
Says that we have to know about the roots first and the trunk first, then know about the flower.
Right.
Basically talking about we have to know about the complexity afterwards.
But
first the fundamentals.
One takeaway from the Joe Rogan podcast that I was listening to with Elon Musk was he just gets on the thing that he thinks that he wants to do. He just gets on with it.
Yeah.
He's not like that. I want to do it. So Joe Rogan asks him a question like, "Why are you digging tunnels?" Then he's like, "People dig tunnels every time. That's what I'm doing. I just hopped on with the VP and I just said we'll dig a big hole in my parking space, and they just started doing it." So that's a really nice take on it. Like, if you want to do something, just do it. Just don't stop.
And about that fire launchers.
Yeah.
See, but Nilesh, just to speak to you in that sense, like when you say you don't have a traditional education, sometimes that can be a blessing in disguise, because so what's his name? Like this famous painter back in the day. He made this. He made one of the best sketches in the world. It's called the Vernacular Man. I'm forgetting his name, man. Like now, Leonardo da Vinci.
Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man. Yeah.
Vitruvian Man. Sorry. So Da Vinci never went to school. Like he never went to education because he was what's it called? He was a bastard. So he was not of his biological. Like he was obviously from his father's. He was a bastard in that sense. And what he says that it helped him because at that time in Italy there was something called an aristocracy. So which meant that if you were born into a certain household, and so like the caste, sort of like the caste system in India. So if you were born into a certain household and your household did a certain job, you would be expected to do that job. So his step brothers in that sense were all accountants. And he said that if he went to normal school, he would have been made to become an accountant. And if he said, if I would have become an accountant, probably be a very shit accountant. He said that, but what he did was he used to take out time every single day, and he used to note down questions that he had, simply questions that he used to observe all around him. Like things like how many times a woodpecker pecks, or like why does a woodpecker peck? Now you've got to be pretty curious to think why does a woodpecker peck, or things like that. But then he said that actually helped him to understand like the world around him, if that makes sense, because it didn't restrict him, it didn't constrict him to say that if you go to school, there's a certain way you're made to think about the world, which was not there.
I totally agree with you there. And I think again, I'm not trying to make it sound like, oh, I did some big thing, but it is sort of taking a risk. And I remember one thing very clearly. See, I'm not a very privileged person, but I'm privileged enough to have a tuition teacher at my home, like teaching me. So he was like, look, you don't go to school. What are you going to do? You're going to end up on the footpath. You're going to end up on the street. You're going to regret it later on. And I don't remember exactly what I said. It was better than what I'm going to say now. But I said something like, look, I'm not going to regret it. I'm conscious of it. I know what I'm doing. It's not like I'm just laying around. I know what I'm doing. And if this turns bad, all right, I tried something and I failed. Why would I regret it for the rest of my life? I'll try something else. And see, like talking about myself, and even right now, I'm 24, but I'm kind of jobless, bro. So but at least I like
talking about working outside the system. So, but I'm still up for hire.
Yeah, but at least what I like to think and say is I opt that way. I opt to be that way would be the better sentence. And the reason for that is I'm sort of trying to look at the longer, like the bigger picture, or the longer timeline, I would say. So and it sometimes creates discussions in the household, like but for me, again, I believe in that thing jo hum pehle baat kar rahe the na, ki we are not here just for ourselves, we are here for the humankind. And I think so I sort of do think in that sense, and I try to do in that sense. But the problem is, जो मैं ट्रेडिशनैलिटी की प्रॉब्लम बोलने चाह रहा हूँ, इतनी देर से बोल नहीं पा रहा, that is, we measure success or even life happiness with money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the only reason we are measuring that with money is because money is a very easy element to measure. So that's why we are just taking the easiest thing which we can measure, and we are being like, okay, his life success means with that. Even that is kind of lazy in my opinion. And again, I can be wrong about that. For me, a successful human being is someone who can provide to the
society,
entire humankind, I would say, in fact.
Okay.
For me, that's what a successful human being means. And
that's a big ask.
That is, but
high standards.
I guess I look at someone like Vincent van Gogh or Vincent van Gogh. You can say whatever you want, but he didn't make a dime off of his paintings. But he's one of the most successful painters of all time.
Even we don't know the man who has earned enough money, if he thinks he's successful or not.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And wait, it's just like I'll cut it right here. It's just lazy to think of it as because it's the easiest thing you can measure.
See, but something I wanted to touch base on when you were talking about the education system, I don't want to like critique it to its absolute, like I still think there are positives to the education system, like the fact that we have so many specialists. Like I'm just glad, bro, that there are like people working in labs who are fascinated by insects and spend their whole lives working on insects. Like that just prevents so many infections that we have as human beings. You know what I mean? But then the thing is, what I want to focus here in on is, so with Da Vinci's work, I got to know that through this author called Walter Isaacson. So he's a biographer. He's a great biographer. He's written like some of the best biographies out there. Steve Jobs, Einstein, and Da Vinci, among others. So he said that when people say that they want to sometimes work outside the system, and this is not a critique to your work or anyone, Nilesh, for that matter, but this is an example that they say that, because Einstein thought outside the box, maybe I should think outside the box as well. Because I'm just like Einstein, right? You're like, sure, tell me about it. And then when Einstein thought outside the box, he knew what was in the box. If that makes sense. So
that's very true.
That's something that people also should consider.
In fact, that's also sort of a critique of the secret or the law of attraction. It's like, you just believe in this and you believe you've had it, and Oprah Winfrey comes and I believe, and it's like, who else believes? Everyone who's on the street. They believe that they can do big things outside the box without understanding the box. Exactly what you're saying. They genuinely believed they would be able to do that, but that's the problem with the secret. You just believe.
And it just takes you down dark holes, I think. Like it just, you start believing in things that makes no sense. So But listen, guys. This has been a fascinating conversation. Like, this has probably been one of the greatest conversations I've had on the podcast. Thank you so much for wasting so much time with me.
Likewise, man. Likewise. No,
Yeah.
Just before going, if I could get some book recommendations, podcast recommendations, film recommendations, whatever you guys want to throw at me, that'd be great.
All right. I guess. Are you into abstract shit? But you are. Yes, you are. Obviously, you are. We've been talking for hours and we've been talking about abstract shit. Yes, you are. So, but you see, abstract movies is a little different thing because we expect movies to be spoon fed to us because of Bollywood industry and even the commercialized Hollywood industry. But if you're into abstract movies, there's this movie on Netflix by the same writer I was talking about, Charlie Kaufman. I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Okay.
That's a very good movie, but it kind of takes a toll on you. It's like almost you'll be like, what am I watching? I guess. And but it's one of those movies which you watch and then you go to the internet like, what did I watch? And then like, oh fuck, that's what I watched. Not necessarily for everyone, but yes. So I think it's an abstract movie, and I don't know if you've seen abstract movies much.
Yeah.
So that might be a good experience for you.
No, definitely. Anything from you guys?
So I would recommend for podcast. There's this great podcast called Daily Stoic by
Daily Stoic,
Ryan
Ryan
Holiday.
Holiday. Yeah.
And for like, if I talk about my field like nutrition and all, I'll recommend The Beauty and the Geek by BioLane.
Okay.
Yeah. And the book I mentioned is The Power of Habit. It's a great book. Must read.
Is that by James Clear or is it some other book? No, that's Atomic
No,
Habits.
that's Atomic
Charles Duhigg,
Habits. Charles Duhigg.
Okay.
He basically like expanded on James Clear expanded on Duhigg's ideas from The Power of Habit into Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
I'll
Anything from your
recommend
side? Yeah.
everyone. Yeah, I'll recommend everyone to watch this podcast called All Walks of Life. Like you need to watch this podcast. Like this is a great podcast. But no, genuinely, I don't really read, and I'm working towards it. So any recommendation from you? For me,
yeah.
because I'm
depends.
starting out to read. Yeah, so
It depends on what you're into. Like,
I haven't started reading yet. Like, I would.
so something I recommend to people who want to get into reading and want to have a knack for reading is, even if you think something is junk, and what I mean by junk is, even if you think it's fiction or something like that, which I think is very useful, but people often think that it's not that useful, I would still say pick that up, because things like, just pick whatever interests you. Like if it's like you talk a lot about investing from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Pick things up on investing, because what happens is that even if you read 2-3 books on investing and you think that I know a lot about this, but I'm still reading about this, it will get you in the act of, you like reading. Then you'll start loving reading, and then you start exploring different topic areas. But if I had to give recommendations, like I don't know how many I can give, but I'd like to recommend the Bhagavad Gita. Like that's just something I quote a lot from. But other than that, like I really like what's it called? Anything from Dostoevsky or Nietzsche. Like I don't want to sound dark, but those guys are fascinating. Like the stuff they write. Like
I'll surely check that out.
Yeah.
I would like just to add to that, like in my website, I have this place for book recommendations, and there is like recommendation for Bhagavad Gita, and in parentheses I've written "not kidding, for real."
No, genuinely, man, for sure. Bhagavad Gita is the shit. Yeah. But listen, thanks for coming on. Just before you go, anything from my audience, anything you'd like to point them towards, your social media handles? Obviously, I'll be linking everything in the show notes, but anything else? Obviously, subscribe to your channel as well, which is great. But yeah, anything else?
Check it out if you like this conversation.
Like, share, subscribe.
Come on and comment. Like, fuck off, you guys. Stop. Like, guys as well. Thanks for having us, man.
Thanks for inviting us, bro.
It's been an absolute pleasure, man. Great conversation.
And I think it's been the longest podcast we've ever done.
Yeah, we have been on.
Hopefully I didn't bug you guys.
No. Not at all.
It was great, man. It was really great.
It was
great.
We were in the flow state.